everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
Our fifth Prime Minister in 4 years. Blimey. And, well, look, we want him to succeed. But will this one be any different? Andy Burnham, the new head honcho, the speed this all happened, I know this is a well-trodden debate already, is actually breathtaking. 1 minute he was Mayor of Greater Manchester. What, a month and a bit ago he wasn't even an MP. The next he's holding keys to number 10 without the country ever really having a chance to scrutinise him in a prospective prime ministerial nothing at all. We really know very little.
I think Burnham has to walk a fine line. I think that's probably what's going on, because if he were to sweep into Downing Street and say, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to do things completely differently to Starmer, then people would say, hold on, mate, we need a general election in that case, because no one voted for that. No one voted for you to be Prime Minister. You weren't standing in the 2024 general election. We've never seen your manifesto. Who the hell are you? That's what people would be asking.
It is therefore
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you on Talk for the next 3 hours, here until 1 o'clock. And of course at midnight it's your chance to talk back. And I want to talk to you about green energy, because we are going to be discussing that a little bit later, as we learn that over £1 billion so far this year has been spent on switching off wind energy. So I want to find out what's going wrong with clean energy, and do you support our drive to move to more clean energy? Do you support the speed at which we're trying to do it? It clearly isn't working if we're spending £1 billion to switch it off, and this is because of the cabling, and there's not enough. So wind energy in the area that it's produced can be used, but often of course it's needed to be used entirely across the country, and they can't get it across the country, so they switch it off. Octopus Energy, Greg Jackson, is suggesting that there should be local benefits to people next to wind farms. In other words, instead of throwing that money away, instead of just wasting £1 billion on switching it off, that people who live locally to wind farms should get cheaper energy. Do you agree with that? The Keir Starmer said that wasn't a good idea because it meant that there would be a postcode lottery on energy prices, but there's a postcode lottery on so many things. I personally think it would be a good idea. I hate to see that sort of waste. £1 billion. I mean, that would solve all the problems of Andy Burnham. That would sort out the budget in October. No more taxation. He wouldn't have to borrow any more money. It could all be done with that. Well, some of it could be done with that. Anyway, he needs a bit more than £1 billion, but it would certainly, it's not a small amount of money. So I'd like to hear from you on that. Do you support green energy? Do you think it's the only way we can go? And yes, there's going to be a bit of pain on the way. Or do you think we're just not ready for it yet and we need to slow things down? Let me know what you think about this. Do you live near to a wind farm? Do you think that it would be a good idea that if you do live next to wind farms that you get cheaper energy? I can't see a problem with that. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight. We're also going to be crossing over to New York to get the very latest on what's happening in the US. So all of that is to come. Right, for the rest of the programme, we have Vincent Moss, former political editor, in the studio to go through the papers for you. Also, Caroline Faraday is going to be addressing the Tupac story. I have such random interests, and this is a really interesting story, actually. So we're going to be discussing Tupac being fatally shot in Las Vegas 30 years ago, and why that has just now come to court. So we're going to be looking at that. Also, wind energy, Con Mernin joins us to talk about clean energy costs. But first, since taking office as PM just over 3 weeks ago, oh, my goodness. Time is so weird. Andy Burnham has enjoyed an initial polling surge dubbed the Burnham bounce. However, early political pressure is testing his leadership. He recently intervened in the prisoner early release scheme, vowing to fast-track measures that prevent the killers of PC Andrew Harper from leaving jail early. He says he's confident he can do this. He's already been accused of several U-turns on the issue. Well, Burnham is currently on a nationwide tour focused on cost of living issues. His momentum has fueled speculation over whether he might call a general election. While some commentators argue a vote would secure him a mandate, critics insist he should focus on delivery rather than electioneering. He is never going to call an election in a month. He's waited 10 years for this job. I don't think he's going to risk it now. Look what happened to Theresa May. Anyway, lots to discuss here, and here with me to do just that, I'm thrilled to say, is Angus Walker, former ITN political correspondent. Good to see you again, Angus. Thank you for joining me. Let's talk about the situation with the early release scheme, the prisoner early release scheme. It feels to me like he may have shot himself in the foot with this, politically speaking. What do you make of it?
Well, it's very, very tricky for the new Prime Minister, isn't it? And it has U-turn written all over it, because he's going ahead with this early release scheme on the face of it, because the government is telling us that the prison system would actually collapse unless they release some prisoners earlier than planned. Remember, if you get sentenced to prison, let's say 8 years, you do 4 of them in a prison, and then you do 4 of them out on license, unless you commit other crimes in prison, of course. And there is parole involved as well. But that's the sort of standard way of looking at a prison sentence. Releasing people earlier frees up more prison places. Apparently, prisons are at bursting point. If you don't do that, if people get arrested, charged, taken to court and convicted, there's nowhere for them to go. So this is the government at pressure from both ends. But of course, releasing prisoners early, any prisoner early, is not going to be a very popular policy or move by any politician. So he's between a rock and a hard place here, and seems to be climbing back and rowing back on the types of prisoners that can be released. And of course, the prisoners who were involved and convicted of manslaughter in the connection with the killing of this police officer, that has caused a massive public backlash, with a petition with getting on for nearly 1 million signatures now, just giving you a sense of the strength of feeling about that, the opposition to their release. And so Burnham's got to come up with something fast. He's bought a little bit of time by saying he's tasked the Justice Secretary and the Home Secretary to come up with a plan. but he's running out of time fast. The public clearly want something done quickly about this and do not want these people back out on the streets.
Because they're eligible for release, sorry, in January, aren't they? And that is fast approaching. But did he not understand the tenet of the early release scheme when he waded into this? Because it appears that all the legal advice is that you can't just exempt two people. It's a category of crime, manslaughter, which is included in this. I mean, perhaps it shouldn't have been included in the first place. This level of very serious crime, but it has been. And therefore, he's kind of stuck with what his colleagues have done on this release scheme. Do you think he just didn't quite understand it? Because it feels to me like he could get egg on his face over this.
Yeah, I mean, having worked as a Home Affairs journalist and indeed worked in government as a special advisor in my career, I think this is the classic clash between the sort of in the weeds legalese and that is spoken inside meetings in Whitehall before policies actually meet and have a collision with public opinion and the common sense that the public often have. Now, it might have sounded like they had no other choices in meetings and say, well, we've got to let these categories out. Can we obviously limit the worst offenders? They're not coming out early. Is there any way we can do that? Yes, we can do that. But there are certain categories, let's not let murderers out. But you can sort of imagine the sort of horse trading that went on in terms of working out what category, what crimes, people convicted of what crimes could be let out and convicted of what crimes have to be kept in until their sentences are fully served. All sounds probably legally sound inside these meetings, but of course then out in the wide world, immediate collision with public opinion, and they're having to backtrack. So it's one of those, I think, where there's a clash between policy wonkery and public common sense.
So they'll be looking for a loophole. Presumably that's what they'll be looking for, and I wonder if, because PC Harper clearly was a police officer, I wonder if that could be the loophole. We're hearing rumours, aren't we, that we found a way. We think we've found a way to do this, but I can't help thinking again that there will be legal pushback from other people, potentially, who might not be released for the same crime.
You're absolutely right, and it sounds absolutely certain that the Prime Minister, if a Prime Minister is saying we're going to find a way of stopping these people coming out and instructing cabinet ministers to do that, then it will be delivered. It has to be delivered now because he's actually set great store on it. But then the next one will pop up. This is whack-a-mole. Yeah. This is whack-a-mole time for them. Then the next horrendous criminal will be on the front pages, and the public again will be totally against that prisoner or that category of prisoner being let out. So this is no end, this is unending for a government when it comes to this particular issue. And of course, people who have been convicted of domestic violence are being let out as well. And of course, the victims of domestic violence absolutely appalled by the fact that people who've been convicted of that type of crime are being let out early as well, because they will be living in fear. They will be very concerned about people like that being let out back on the streets. Where will they be? How will they be monitored? And then you've got the upset being caused to families connected to all sorts of horrible crimes. And that's why it's such an emotional issue. And that's why the sort of legalese and what sounded plausible in the clinical environment of a Whitehall meeting room just doesn't stack up when it meets the very emotional reaction from the public.
And it would also not be on the realms of possibility, I assume, for the two killers themselves to mount some kind of legal question against the government, having been told that they're eligible for early release, having served 30% of their tariff. We could see that happening as well.
Undoubtedly, and I think if people like that are getting legal advice, that would be their legal advice. Yeah, they would be advised by their lawyers that there isn't a legal right for the government to hold them longer if they meet the particular criteria of the sentencing that was passed.
I mean, you couldn't make this up, but he, like you said, he has to win this, because if he doesn't, I mean, that's the honeymoon over, right? That's it. He's done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honeymoons don't last that long these days, as we've seen. But also, it's very notable that every new prime minister, I mean, you go all the way back to Tony Blair, eventually some event, or usually some self-inflicted event, comes along, and the honeymoon vibes come crashing down.
Yeah, I think this is about the same point that Keir Starmer came up with the winter fuel thing from old age pensioners. Yeah. Let's have a look now at the polls, because Labour. The Labour has surged now above Nigel Farage's, above Reform, and some people are suggesting now is the golden moment that Burnham should call a general election. What would your odds be on that?
I mean, let's look at it this way. On paper, you can see the argument behind closed doors for going for it, because Reform is the enemy that Labour is facing. They have been ahead in the polls since, until a couple of weeks ago. From March last year onwards, ahead in the polls. I think about 150 polls in a row, Reform were ahead. Now they're not. And of course, strike while your enemy is wounded, is weak. And there's all those sort of arguments. I was also looking at polling by More in Common, the pollsters, and that showed that as far as the public are concerned, when it comes to wanting an early general election, it's very split. It's sort of roughly a third want an immediate general election because they've got a new prime minister. There's about a third who say an early general election, but not immediate, and the other third saying, hang on, let's just wait till 2029 and get on with it. But then you look more deeply, and it's also split along partisan lines, where opposition parties, opposition to Labour, Reform especially, are in favour of an early general election, and Labour supporters less likely to support an early general election. And that's quite interesting, because the demand from the opposition support, people who are voting for other parties, not Labour, is because they want a new prime minister coming in without a general election. They see that person as they're without a mandate, and so they want to put them to the test. But I think there's conflicting things there for any planner in number 10.
I just can't see Andy Burnham having waited so long to be Prime Minister. I mean, what happened to Theresa May, it can backfire.
And also talk about it can backfire. I remember Gordon Brown, the more he talked about the possibility, the more he got branded as a bottler, and it really backfired as well. So it's very treacherous territory. But I actually think if he called a general election, the reaction from the public, I believe, would be pretty negative. I think a lot of people would say, can you just get on with delivering? I think,
absolutely.
The public are a bit sick of party politics. They're sick of personality politics. They wouldn't mind having a politician who just delivers.
Who just gets on with it. And there's going to be raised eyebrows, and I'm going to mention this to you because we have to then play a very long list. But of course, we've got the Clacton by-election. Have you got that ready, guys? Yeah. 34 people. But so the Clacton by-election, of course, is happening this week. Yes. I mean, is Nigel Farage worried about it, do you think?
I think that most of the polling would support the idea that Nigel Farage is going to comfortably be returned in
as Clacton. Comfortably as he'd like?
I think so, yes. I mean, the opposition is pretty widely spread with another 33 candidates or something. Yeah. Obviously, we've now got into having to mention all the candidates, so, I'm sending prayers, but Count Binface,
the longest list ever,
Count Binface being the primary opponent, given that the other main parties refused to stand. So it has turned into a bit of charade, a bit of an end of the pier show.
Will it be a real hollow win?
Yeah, it would be.
It won't mean anything, will it?
Yeah, and a lot of people in Westminster are expecting then in September the commissioner comes back and there might be a recall petition if he is suspended, and then there will be another
by-election. But this time
they will all stand, and then we'll see a true test of Nigel Farage's popularity. But I think if he wins and claims that this is a resounding endorsement of what he was saying when he called this or put up, flicked the switch for this by-election, saying that it was him versus the establishment and he was going to get this endorsement, it doesn't feel like it's going to be the strongest endorsement of that particular plan, and quite widely people are saying it hasn't quite worked out the way he may have hoped.
Yes, I think that's a very polite way of putting it. We will play that list out at the end of this interview. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that Andy Burnham's on a little tour at the moment. Is that entirely necessary, given that we have hundreds of local MPs that he might be talking to in Westminster instead of driving around the country? I
think that the strategy that they're deploying to get through certainly the first 30 days, maybe 100 days, from their point of view, from the Prime Minister's point of view and the team around him is working, in that they're playing to his strengths, aren't they? He is someone who portrays himself as a people person. He can walk the streets, and we've seen footage of him meeting and greeting and chatting to people. He seems very amenable, and people seem to like him. His popularity, his approval ratings are much higher than the other leaders, much higher than the previous Labour leader, that's for sure. And so they're playing to his strengths. Interestingly, looking at some other polling, that when it comes to the sort of social media he's doing, because he's doing a lot of TikToks, he's doing a lot of different social media videos, quite a high proportion, around, I think it was about 53% of people saying that they've, seen him or heard him on social media in the last 3 weeks or so, which is astonishingly high, and actually higher than, very accomplished media performers like Nigel Farage, for example. Even Rupert Lowe, the leader of Restore, is always cited as someone with a strong social media presence, because Elon Musk retweets a lot of his stuff, but way higher than them. So they want to get him out, and I think it's largely so they can create content. I mean, he's a content creator as well as a Prime Minister. I mean,
look, I suppose that's the way it's going for everybody, isn't it? I was talking to my makeup artist earlier on who hates going online. He said, but I've got to build my profile. I was like, oh, God, to be young. No, thank you. I'm not really interested in that. So do you think that this will add more to the Burnham bounce, or will people again be saying, look, you get back to the office, whichever office you choose to be in, and get on with it?
I think you're right. I think you're suggesting, Petrie, there is a limit to this. I mean, you can only do so much. What's my favourite Greg's order?
Yeah.
Or, what's my favourite pub snack, before people are going to go, can you just, get on with dealing with the real issues? And cost of living is the number one issue. It comes up as top of the list of issues that most trouble the public, and when you look at all the polling. So, he is responding to that by saying he's going on a cost of living national tour. But people will get pretty tired, I think, or the majority of people may well get very tired after a while of sort of jokey, blokey videos talking about pub snacks, etc., when there are serious issues facing our country that need to be solved, mainly economic ones, and they need to be sorted out. And, he's got to get into the serious business soon. I think they're trying to make the most out of the bounce, the most out of any honeymoon, as they would. You can see why, but it's not an endless road.
And he's got to get back to some serious telling us how he's going to fund what he's been talking about so far, and anything else that he might come up with. Because I tell you what I'm sick of, Angus, and it's all of them, actually, just saying we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but there's no detail, there's no how, there's no when, there's no what, there's no digging, and they're all the MPs, all parties are responsible for that at the moment. We're just not getting any depth to anything that's being said.
Yeah, I think we're in a funny period as well, because don't forget, he's had the luxury of becoming Prime Minister at the start of the summer recess. So he hasn't had to do a PMQs yet. He's not under the same kind of scrutiny, under the same kind of pressure. So he is allowed to, be wandering around doing videos about pub snacks and Greggs, etc. But that also has to come to an end, because he will have to be back in Westminster. He will be under a completely different level of scrutiny once the recess finishes in 2-3 weeks.
I mean, he's barely been questioned by journalists, has he? I mean, they're really breaking him in gently. It's going to be a rude awakening for a man who was mayor, and that is a very different job. That's a people-pleasing job, being a mayor.
Yeah, I think at the moment that this tour and everything he's doing, all the social medias, he's building up putting as much in the vibe bank as he can before things get a bit more miserable for him with the return to proper parliamentary fisticuffs and everything that's entailed. And of course, there's a budget. Coming in. The party conference, of course, will be a lap of honour for him. No trouble there, because often party conferences can be tricky for party leaders. Not this particular year for Andy Burnham, you'd think. But then there's a budget, and the budgets are tough at the moment. Where do you go? Is it tax or is it borrowing? And either way, extremely serious consequences for the country if either of those things are raised.
That's when the wheels start wobbling to come off. Good to speak to you, Angus. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Angus Walker, their former ITN political correspondent. Here's the list.
So the full list of candidates for the Clacton by-election: Joseph 77, the Independent; Adam Akatip, the Forward Party; Count Binface, the Count Binface Party; Nick the Incredible Flying Brick, the official monster raving loony party; Tony Kane's an independent. Woke Trump Kazi is an independent. William Stewart James Clouston is the Social Democratic Party candidate. Rhys Cowan, an independent. Glenn Charles Cummings, an independent. Martin Davis, the Freedom Alliance Real People, Real Alternative. Andy Earlam's an independent. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK Party. Atiye Fards, an independent. Lawrence Fox for the Reclaim Party. Tony Francis is an independent. Robin Green, an independent. Abby Hookway, an independent. Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Stephen Richard Ingram is an independent, as is Amy Morris. Derek Norbert Morris is an independent. Michael Noel O'Keefe, an independent. Martin O'Brien, an independent. Nick Pellis, an independent. And Ketanar Kumar Pipiaya is the UK Voice Safer and Stronger UK Party. Daniel Pocock's an independent. James Ransley, the Consensus Party candidate. Jerry Smith is an independent. Kai Stevens for the British Democrats. John Stevens for rejoin the EU. Baron von Thunderclap for the official monster raving loony party. Pamela Walford is an independent. Marcus White, Everyone is God Party. And Mark Wilkinson for the Independents.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you. And coming up at midnight, it's your chance to talk back. And we're talking about energy, as we learn today that I mean, I literally can't believe the amount of money this is. The cost to consumers of paying wind farms to switch off when Britain's electricity grid can't cope has exceeded £1 billion already this year and is on track for an annual record. Now, most of this costs come from paying gas-fired power plants near urban areas to fire up to cover for wind turbines in remote locations that have to be turned off because of insufficient cabling capacity. I mean, I can't even figure out how that's a thing. Anyway, we'll be talking to somebody about that in a few moments' time, because I just don't understand how our green energy is failing so much. So does going green make you see red? Do you think we are not ready for this yet? We're clearly not. The infrastructure clearly isn't ready to be relying so much on clean energy. Now, I personally think that clean energy is the only future that we've got, because at some point, not in our lifetime, but at some point, the oil and gas reserve, they're all going to run out, right? They are. It's a finite amount of stuff. So even if it lasts another 100,000 years or whatever, human beings are going to have to find a different way. Plus energy security. We have no energy security. Any oil that we take out of the North Sea goes onto the open market. It doesn't really adjust our costs, and it's a very tiny amount. It'd be about 2% of the world market. So it's a very tiny amount. So we do have to find a way, and I do think that green energy has to be the answer, because it's sustainable. It's energy that just keeps repeating, right? If it's solar energy, I mean, look what's happened this summer. If it's wind energy, look what's happening with the turbines. We've got so much wind, hot air, that we can't use it all. We're just switching it off and not making the most of it. So clearly this is a sustainable sea energy, all of those things, wave energy. So it's obviously it's the right thing to do, but we are just not ready for it yet, are we? And do you think the people who live near to wind farms should get cheaper electricity rather than just switching it off and wasting the whole thing and paying to switch it off? £1 billion already this year. It's an absolutely eye-watering amount of money. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and coming up at the top of the hour. In the meantime, oh, and also we're going to be talking about the Tupac case. I know, how random is that? The Crips and the Bloods and the gang warfare that led to Tupac, the rapper, being killed, being gunned down on the streets of Las Vegas 30 years ago. And the reason we're talking about it is because the case is finally coming to court. So we'll be looking into that with Caroline Faraday in about 20 minutes time. In the meantime, British energy consumers have paid over £1 billion this year to turn off wind turbines when power lines cannot handle the electricity. The grid cannot move all the power from where it is being generated to where it's needed because of a lack of proper cables, and as a result, wind farms in places like Scotland are regularly turned off, where gas plants close to demand centres in the south are fired up instead. Well, to help fix the problem, energy supplier Octopus wants regional power pricing, which would give cheaper electricity to people living near wind farms when output is high. That has already been rejected, but was rejected by Keir Starmer, because he said that would lead to postcode lottery pricing. But would you mind that? I wouldn't. I just think I'd rather not see waste. I'd rather not see us paying to switch off machines than having people getting cheaper electricity. But let me know how you feel about that. And do you live near a wind farm? Let me know. Well, Con Mernon joins me now, who's a wind energy researcher at the University of Strathclyde. Con, thank you very much indeed for joining me. What is going wrong with our green energy that it's cost us £1 billion to regulate?
Yeah, Petrie, thank you very much, by the way, for having me on the show. Just to paint the picture for your viewers, you've already made about half the arguments I already make for wind turbines, so you're doing really well there. To paint the picture for your viewers, though, you made a great example. We have a lot of wind farm density in places like Scotland, in the UK, and that's quite far away from demand centres. Obviously, Scotland has a much lower population than England. And what happens is we have these people called grid operators. And what they do is they find that I need to bid, we have a certain amount of energy that we need down south, say, for example, close to London, and an operator and a generator up in Scotland, a wind farm, says, I can provide that energy. So they send that down, but sometimes, as a lot of wind farms are doing this, because we have a lot of energy up in Scotland and wind energy, there's too much going through the cables at once, and it causes these wind generators to have to turn off. The grid operators tell them, no, you have to turn off. And what happens is that wind farm is automatically reimbursed for what they would have produced. So basically, we're paying for electricity that we're not getting, in a way. And you pointed out the example as well, that we have to cater to that demand that will be down south. We have to turn on stations closer to them, which most likely, because of the flexibility, Petrie, is the gas power stations.
And of course the reason we've crossed the £1 billion mark a couple of months earlier is because of the US-Iran situation, because switching on those gas and oil facilities is costing us more. But a lot of people will be saying, well, look, have we put the cart before the horse here? You know, we've got these wind farms, but we don't have the cables necessary to use all that energy, and we don't have the battery storage where we could at least store it so we could use it across the less windy months or the winter months. Is the cart before the horse here? Are we ready for this green energy?
Yes, and you know, it is a big case of that, the cart and the horse as well. People are right always to be skeptical of new installments, wind energy, and especially change, especially for something as vital as energy. The UK's energy market was pretty stable whenever it came to things like gas being introduced in the late 60s and 70s and on until wind turbines really took off in the early 2000s. And now, but one thing I will say, Petrie, is that if this was any other case, say for example Scotland had gas power stations up north as well, same thing would happen. Yes, like you said, it's just about the grid. And as well, since the pipeline of projects that we have that are currently waiting, that are passed up in things like regulation, which is slowing things down, these projects have been 10 years in the waiting. And I'd assume, like you maybe as well, that 10 years ago they would have thought that transmission would be sorted.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we've taken it a bit for granted. And yes, we have. We maybe pulled the cart before the horse, but I wouldn't say that it's more so to do with gas. I would say that, yeah, we haven't both upgraded as well as our power generators, we haven't also upgraded our transmission system, which is in desperate need of upgrade.
So this is when they talk about we need to upgrade the grid. That's what they're talking about. And what is the problem? I mean, I can see those windmills going there. The people in Scotland should be getting their electricity, instead of switching them off, which seems like a terrible waste, is just using that electricity to benefit, even if it's hospitals and schools or whatever you do with it, just don't switch them off. Is there not a way to handle that on a local level?
Yeah, Petrie, you would think there is an easy way to handle it. The easiest way is actually more load, what we call load, which is basically things that you pump electricity into. And then the wind farms don't need to curtail because there's something that they
storing
can provide
it, like a big battery. So basically,
exactly. Yeah. So let's take, for example, California. It's one of the world's leading economies, and they have a population less than the UK, but actually they have battery storage and they have a bountiful supply of solar energy. I don't know if you've heard, but they have battery storage that's as the same capacity as half of our wind power fleet. Wow. They have in battery storage, and what they do is they cater this battery storage to low demand. So whenever it's low demand, like for example, maybe whenever people are at work or during the night as well, the wind doesn't stop blowing during the night, we can charge up these batteries. And it means if we put them on constraint boundaries, it's a very fancy word for basically right at the border between England and Scotland, that's where we don't have enough transmission cables. But if we put our batteries there, then we can charge them up when it's low demand, and as soon as it's high demand, instead of having to turn on gas power stations and pay the premium, like we've discussed before, you can turn on battery storage, and it will provide you some relief, and it will provide relief from bills as well. You talked about the £1 billion figure. It's been rising. So back in 2020, this figure was only around 250 million, and now it's, like we talked about, just halfway through this year. It is 1 billion. By 2030, Modo expect this figure to be around upwards of 4 billion, okay, within a 4 to 8 billion boundary.
In switching off electricity?
Yes, and paying for gas power stations, because like you said, it's the dual figure. It's sort of a dual casualty. We have to pay both the wind farms to turn off because they were promised that sale of their electricity, and then we also have to pay the gas power station to turn on closer to the demand.
I mean, from Octopus is saying that he'd like to see people who live near to wind farms, I presume that would be solar farms as well, where there is too much electricity for the grid to handle, that they should get the electricity much cheaper. I mean, I understand as well we've been selling discounted energy overseas as well, rather than binning it entirely, which seems incredibly unfair. And a lot of people who are being told that they've got to pay into this green energy, they've got to buy into it as well as pay into it on a psychological level, are hearing all of this and thinking, well, what am I buying into? What do you want me to say about this? Because it just seems that other people are benefiting from our cheaper energy, and then we're paying double to switch off electricity and switch on gas.
Yeah, and you've raised an amazing point there that I, as a wind researcher, even agree with. I think that the industry has gotten public engagement completely wrong. Yeah. And I think that the government also has a responsibility on that. We actually had a de facto wind ban, if you remember, during the David Cameron era, brought in this idea of regulations being placed on wind farm construction down in England. And now that has came back to bite the UK. Because now we have our power stations located Scotland has obviously a bountiful wind resource, and it is better than England, but at the same time we've seen these wind farms all over the world. You don't have to have a unique wind environment anymore. These turbines are great energy producers. Yeah. About your point that the Greg Jackson made, it is a good point, and yes, I'm familiar that it was turned down by Keir Starmer's government in Parliament, but I don't also necessarily think it will solve the exact problem of curtailment. It might indirectly pay passive adjustment to it, because if you think about it as well, if you endorse people to buy in, like you said, to these wind projects that would be near, for example, in England or down south, and they would be getting dividend, they'd be getting money from towards the council that can go into infrastructure.
It would stop all the complaining, wouldn't it, if people were charged us a 50% discount on your energy if you let us build a wind farm just up the road.
Yes, you're exactly right. And it solves the constraint issue as well that we were talking about, because then all of a sudden you've got way more generation down south, and as well you're cutting out gas, which I can't stress enough. It is the most important thing to cut out. Like you said there, that curtailment cost, which is often cited as just being the amount of money it costs to pay off wind farms, but forgetting that, yes, if we turn off the wind farms because there's a constraint, we have to turn on gas closer to the demand centre, which it is the real cost grinder.
Because China, despite what Donald Trump says, they're the biggest producers of wind energy in the world. They don't seem to have constraint issues at all. What are they doing that we need to learn?
Yeah, well, see, China's investing in various different types of infrastructure. Obviously, they're investing in, like we talked about with like we talked about with California via battery storage. We also have things in China going like pumped hydro. And pumped hydro is something that this country specifically could use very well, especially places like Scotland, where these constraints happen to be. If we have a lot more pumped hydro stations, just so the viewers know, pumped hydro is whenever you have, say, for example, a reservoir at the bottom and there's a reservoir further up. We can have a pumping system where we take electricity, we use that to pump the water all the way to the top, and then we can use that flow when we need it, like a water battery, like a battery storage, that falls over our turbine and then makes electricity. China has one of the biggest dams in the world. I'm not sure if you know the Three Gorges Dam. It has its own drawbacks environmentally. That's why it's so important that even renewable energy is looked after in terms of the environment, and that the proper procedure does go through. We also have places like Paraguay and in Europe, more so in Europe as well, of where we see interconnectivity. And that is a pledge that was given by the late Minister for Net Zero, which was Ed Miliband. And hopefully that pledge is upkept by his successor. And the idea is to increase connectivity across all of Europe, like you pointed out too, of where we can send this energy. If we don't have the load, or we're doing all these things at once, which would probably be the best thing, we become more connected, which means more resilient as well. But then also at the same time, if we need to send our load somewhere, we can send it to a different country instead, and at least get paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to get a move on, don't we, Con? But I think I think you and I have solved most of the problems. I think we've done well. Good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Con Burnham, then, who's a wind energy researcher at the University of Strathclyde. Quick break. Back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just a reminder that coming up at the top of the hour, Vincent Moss will be here in the studio to go through the newspapers. Now, though, it's almost exactly 30 years after one of the most influential hip-hop icons of the 1990s, Tupac Shakur, was fatally shot in Las Vegas. The murder trial over his death has just officially begun. Former gang leader Dwayne Kef D. Davis, 63, faces a single murder charge. Prosecutors do not accuse Davis of pulling the trigger, but allege that he orchestrated the 1996 drive-by shooting in gang retaliation and that he supplied the murder weapon. Well, the state's case relies heavily on Davis's own memoir and interviews implicating himself. Davis has pleaded not guilty, claiming that he fabricated those stories for publicity and for profit. But why is this coming to court now, 30 years, 3 decades after that shooting? Well, to discuss this further with me is Caroline Faraday, a multi-award-winning journalist in Los Angeles. How are you?
I am so well, thank you. Yeah, really well. This is a fascinating case. I find cases where the alleged perpetrator has done something really dumb to be particularly fascinating. You know what I mean? And this is a really strange sort of set of events. So
he had a police deal, didn't he, Davis?
Yes, this is it.
Yeah.
So obviously his murder 30 years ago in Las Vegas has remained largely unsolved. Lots of speculation, who was there and why and which gangs and whatnot and the various kind of information. And a lot of the people involved in that have since either sort of died or, you know, when there's gangs involved, people are reluctant to talk to the police in the first place. Now, this is somebody who was a gang leader. He was a former Southside Compton Crips leader. And Dwayne Davis, that is, spoke to the police a lot in that time. And as you say, he had these conversations with the police. And those conversations were private. They weren't allowed to be released. Those conversations were private. But what he did was brag about it. So he went around bragging about it. And then he wrote a book more recently. And in that book, he describes being in the car on the night that Tupac Shakur was shot. He describes being in that vehicle, you know, in Las Vegas, you know, as the white Cadillac pulled up alongside Tupac Shakur's car at a red light and they opened fire. So because he did that, suddenly all these police interviews, you know, they argue to the court, well, this is now, his privacy clause is gone now. Yeah. And the court agreed with him. So all of these interviews he's had throughout the years. So you've got this extraordinary situation where really they don't have a lot of sort of forensic evidence. They don't have, you know, the usual kind of fingerprints and these kind of things. But what you've got is the main defense witness's word that they are using against him to prosecute him after 30 years. It's an extraordinary case.
I mean, it really is. And this is, I mean, just reading into it earlier and sort of knowing a little bit about the background of it. The Crips and the Bloods, the two main rival gangs at the time, and there's even Diddy is even implicated. Somebody has suggested that Diddy was involved in because he owned.
I wouldn't give it that of all people tone.
No, well, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Because there are record labels involved in this that were owned by gang members as well. I mean, this goes really deep, doesn't it, into this entire culture?
Yeah, and sort of Tupac was. It's incredibly sad because he was obviously a very talented artist. He had loads more music to make, and he actually, within that, you know, his music dealt with poverty, his music dealt with racism, violence. It dealt with sort of, you know, topical conversations about the difficulties of life in America. And so he was someone who, as an artist, had a lot to say, had a position to take. So who knows what music he would have made? And a lot of his fans, you know, come to him even sort of new now when you think that, it was 30 years that he passed away. So, yeah, it's going to be televised. So at the moment they're in the boring bit where they're just in the boring bit where they select the jury. So they're asking the jury lots of questions about you know, what kind of music they listen to and what they know about that, you know, like while they're doing the jury selection. So they haven't really got to the bit where what you think of kind of opening statements and the kind of, you know, witnesses being called and the kind of juicier parts of a very compelling court case.
They must think they've got a good chance, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to bring this. And as far as motive is concerned, there was a fight, wasn't there, earlier on in the evening, some gang scrap, where I think it was Dwayne Davis's cousin that was beaten up by either Tupac himself or by his entourage or whatever gangs call that, and they think that's the motive for Davis then being a part of this drive-by. Or he boasted that he was a part of this drive-by shooting.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously looked for a motive, and there have been so much speculation about what the motive should be, but no concrete evidence. But in the last few days, this video has emerged of this fight that took place earlier in the evening on the night that Tupac Shakur was shot. He died 6 days later, so just to separate out why I'm phrasing it that way. So on the night that he was shot, there is now video evidence of this fight that apparently took place. So I think as this case sort of begins to actually get into the, I know it's a murder, so meat is a horrible word, you know what I mean? But it gets into the kind of content of the evidence that's there. But as I say, a lot of the evidence is going to be using this, you know,
his own
Dwayne Davis's words against himself, and he's busy backtracking, saying, well, a lot of what I said in my book was hyperbole, a lot of it wasn't meant, a lot of it was, you know, made up.
I was just showing off. Yeah, I was just showing off, basically.
Well, aren't we hoisted by our own petard now, my friend?
Absolutely. Do you think this will become a sort of a major case in America? People interested in this even 30 years on, because it was a big unsolved, you know, very, very big crime at the time.
There is a huge appetite in terms of sort of what kind of media people are consuming for true crime. And this is like the ultimate true crime. It involves, as you said, the music world, the hip hop world, this unsolved murder, this music artist, the intrigue, all this gangland stuff. Like if you were writing it as a piece of fiction, it's you know, got all of these elements, and it's real and it's true life. So we could finally get some answers. We'll never really know, even from this trial, who pulled the trigger. Clearly, you know, people aren't going to stand up in court and tell the whole truth. If he's saying on one hand this and on the other hand that, you're going to have to make up your own mind. But what is more sort of compelling than watching something where you do get to be, you know, a jury member anyway? You know, I mean, it will be trial by television no matter what.
Absolutely. And he could, I mean, my understanding is if found guilty, he could get a life sentence from this, and all because he couldn't keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? But you find there is a real pattern with, you know, criminals on that scale, alleged criminals, I will say about him at this point, obviously innocent till proven guilty, you know, but where they almost can't help being around the crime, or, you know, when you think about these sort of terrible, serious murders, it's always because the perpetrator, not always, often because the perpetrator has just been sort of, their ego gets the better of them. They can't help but get too close to it and give themselves away in some way. And this is one of those things, I think, where maybe he felt he was a bit untouchable after 30 years.
Yeah.
And the Las Vegas cops are there going, well, I don't think so, my friend.
God, it is absolutely... I, for one, will be watching this as judge and jury myself. So, I don't know about you. Caroline, it's adorable to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. The fabulous Caroline Faraday there, multi-award-winning journalist in Los Angeles. What a story. What an idiot. I mean, goodness me, if you're going to murder somebody or be part of a murder or even be anywhere in the vicinity, shh. That's my rule, anyway. Right, coming up, Vincent Moss will be here, and he'll be going through the papers. Then, of course, don't forget, at midnight, we have the Talkback Hour. I look forward to chatting with you then. So, stay where you are. Papers are next.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
Our fifth Prime Minister in 4 years. Blimey. And, well, look, we want him to succeed. But will this one be any different? Andy Burnham, the new head honcho, the speed this all happened, I know this is a well-trodden debate already, is actually breathtaking. 1 minute he was Mayor of Greater Manchester. What, a month and a bit ago he wasn't even an MP. The next he's holding keys to number 10 without the country ever really having a chance to scrutinise him in a prospective prime ministerial nothing at all. We really know very little.
I think Burnham has to walk a fine line. I think that's probably what's going on, because if he were to sweep into Downing Street and say, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to do things different.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and this is Petrie, and coming up in an hour's time, of course, it's your chance to talk back. So I do want to talk to you about where we're going with green energy, because we were just talking a moment ago about this, that the cost of turning off wind farms has exceeded £1 billion so far this year. £1 billion to switch it off. We're paying double, right? So we have to pay the wind farm to switch it off for the electricity that we would have bought from them, but we haven't been able to. And then we have to pay for the gas as well, which takes the place of the wind. So we're paying double at the moment because the infrastructure isn't there. Basically, we have put the cart before the horse. We've got all of these wind farms, all of these solar farms, but we don't have the storage facilities, we don't have the sort of batteries, if you like, to keep it all, and we don't have the infrastructure in the grid. So what happens is that it could overload, or we've got to send energy from Scotland, where there are multiple wind farms, all the way through different grids, different systems, to get to, let's say, London. Big urban centres where there's more requirement, of course, for electricity. So at the moment, it just doesn't seem right. And we're being asked to not only buy into this, but pay into this as well. So how do we buy into a system that is costing us £1 billion a year to switch it off? It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Octopus Energy, Greg Jackson, is asking for local energy rates. So if you live next to a wind farm or a solar farm, you will get your energy cheaper when there is a capacity issue. So rather than switching off the wind, somebody gets to benefit from that energy at a lower price. And as I was saying to Con a little while ago, I mean, that would stop all the NIMBYs, right? If you were told, right, we want to put a solar farm or we want to put a wind farm in your village, but you'll get a 50% discount on your electricity bills for the rest of time, you'd do it, right? There'd be fewer people complaining about it. I'm sure of it. If they want to put one in Shepherd's Bush, I would happily allow them to. A lot of hot air around by me. So I think that a lot of people would be kind of cool with having these green energy farms near to them if they were told that they could get cheaper energy whilst they allowed it to happen. So I'd like to know what you think. Do you think that it's just too early to be looking at the energy replacing gas and oil? It's literally the only future we have, this green energy, in my view, this sustainable energy, because gas and oil, they're going to run out. They are going. It's a finite amount, whatever that amount is, however many decades or centuries that may last, it will run out. And at the moment, of course, we are at the mercy of the global markets. And we've seen what happened with the Ukraine war, spiking prices. And now we've got the US-Iran war spiking prices. And I'm telling you now that if the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is shut by the Houthis as well, which is part that takes the Suez Canal out of effect as well, we could be looking at oil prices of nearly $200 a barrel if that were to happen. So at the moment it's around 80. So we are at the mercy of these global events at the moment. So really the only answer is to have a sustainable source of energy in this country. And it isn't the oil and gas fields in the north of Scotland, because all that oil is sold on to the open markets. So we have to find a way. But I find it so frustrating that we have these brilliant things happening, but we're spending £1 billion, it'll be nearly £2 billion this year, in switching it off. What a waste. And how dare they keep trying to sell this to us when the infrastructure isn't there? I think that's what annoys me the most about this. But I'd love to hear from you. Does going green make you see red? Do you think that it's way too early? We need to just get the infrastructure put in and stop mucking around. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Well, here with me in the studio to discuss this further is Vincent Moss, a former political editor. Vincent, good evening.
Hi, Petrie.
Hi. I find this immensely frustrating. I cannot bear that we're paying twice for energy because the green energy just can't get to where it's supposed to go. It seems to be such a stupid thing.
That's right. I mean, it's our complete failure over the last few decades to invest in infrastructure.
Yeah.
Whether that's nuclear power stations, sorting out the grid so that we can move energy around, all these things. I mean, even now, you look at the lack of water, that's a failure to build reservoir for 30 years. And now we're facing potentially a food shortage. I mean, what really worries me about the fuel situation is the security of supply. I mean, you highlight the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea. I mean, not only will that drive prices up, but we could potentially see a situation where the lights go out.
Yeah.
And what we really need as an island sort of surrounded by a fair bit of wind and a lot of wave power and solar power, whatever your views of rising costs, and there are some of net zero and the rest of it, we need to have security of supply so we're not dependent on foreign powers and what goes on in a particular seaway in a different part of the world. So I think what we really need to see is a mix of energy where we can be guaranteed that the lights won't go out, and also hopefully that costs start to fall, which they're not at the moment.
No, they're absolutely not. But we are looking at a real problem in the Middle East, because the Iranians have said, look, we're not going back to free vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz. So there is a cost implication coming, and the Gulf states are saying, well, look, we'd rather that than more war. We need it to open, even if there is a toll. And they were charging, I think, $2 million, per boat going out before. So you've got that added cost. So we are at the mercy of all these different parts of the world. And if this is supposed to be a free ocean, if other people start charging for free oceans as well, which has not been done before, this is against maritime law, we're going to see again another dramatic rise in the cost of oil, gas, fertiliser, all of those things that we rely on from around the world. So it's not going to get cheaper. It is going to be more expensive. It just depends by what degree. So I don't want to be beholden. I don't want to be at the mercy of these countries, but neither do I want to see the catastrophic mess we're making of it here.
Well, exactly. And do we want to be dependent on, as we certainly don't, those foreign powers where it won't be the ship owners paying the extra cost?
No, it'll be us.
And we don't know how we can see what's happening because you see the prices at the petrol pumps and in your fuel bills. We need a situation where we home grow our energy the best way we can. And there's arguments about reopening the North Sea fields, which it looks as though like the new PM Andy Burnham might do in some form and use the existing licences, because we're just not in a position where we can rely on our own supply. And one of the most important things is security, and part of that is food security and having enough water, but also a key part of that is having enough energy and not being dependent on someone like the Middle East, especially with what's going on at the moment. So there has to be progress in those areas, but it just takes a long, long time, doesn't it? I mean, nuclear fuel, we always remember, was famously ruled out by Nick Clegg 20 or 30 years ago because he said it would take 10 years for it to come on stream. Well, if they'd done something then, it would be working now, wouldn't it? So
absolutely, and this is it, isn't it? It's those big infrastructure costs that governments kick the can down the road. But we are in a dire situation with food, water and energy, and those are the three main things that governments are there to make sure that the people of this country, we pay our tax. That is their job, to make sure that we have food security, energy security and water security. None of them we have.
Exactly, and they're all exposed at the moment. It's not as though one of those things you might be able to deal with, but at the moment we're looking at all three are problems and about to get worse. We're about to enter the 5th heat wave of the summer, probably the hottest summer on record, way hotter than 76 for those of us who remember it. So we're in a pretty bad place, and there's no imminent solution, and it is not just this government, it's decades and decades of underinvestment, because when it came to choices, people didn't think that building a nuclear power station or building a new reservoir was top of the list. And you rightly highlight one of the big problems, I think, is nobody seems to want any development next to them. And it's fine saying give them a bung, but then everybody will want a bung for everything, and you won't be able to build anything without having to pay the homeowners, whether that's a road or a bypass or a bridge or potentially a school or a hospital. I mean, if you're going to pay everybody for every bit of development, there's a real problem with pylons at the moment, isn't there? You can't extend the grid because people don't want new electricity pylons near their house.
Yeah, they don't, but there are ways of putting pylons underground. Or
very expensive, though.
It is very expensive, yeah. I suppose, yeah, but we can't just keep kicking the can down the road, and all of these things are going to be massively expensive. I mean, just fixing the grid alone is going to be massively expensive, but it depends what we want, doesn't it? I mean, we can't have it all, basically. We're going to have to make decisions before those decisions are made for us.
Well, very much so, and at a time where priorities are there, I mean, the big story is prisons, isn't it? And not enough prison capacity, and then it'll be the cost of living, and then these things have traditionally just not come high enough on the radar until suddenly they're a crisis. But this government seems to be facing an awful lot of those at the moment, and saying that we're going to invest in something that you won't even see the benefit of for 5, 10 or 15 years is a pretty hard sell. It
is a hard sell, but you know, we're looking at a situation where 75% of the country's now in drought. And that is catastrophic. And this is the 5th time in 3 years or something, or third time in 5 years that farmers have had their yields cut, and they've had to deal with floods in the winter and then drought in the summer. And again, it's not like we don't have the appropriate weather here. I mean, we have a lot of rain in the winter. Why I don't know why it doesn't take it's not the wit of
just store the water, but not enough reservoirs. And it'll just put prices up again, won't it? It'll mean supermarket inflation is already under pressure because of rising oil prices, and it'll be under further pressure because the cost of food and commodities will go up because of the lack of yield.
Absolutely, and it's not just happening to us, it's happening all over Europe. So the idea of us just buying in to supplement our weaker yields, just not going to happen. And we've got a problem in Ukraine as well, because the Russians are now saying that they're going to shut down Odessa and stop any supply line leaving into the Med via the coast of Ukraine. So you know, the geopolitics of all of this it has such massive implications on our security at home. So
it does.
We're not getting the breadbasket of the week now. That was already damaged during the war. If that supply gets cut, we're in trouble again.
And you've already had some talk of people saying prepare for shortages, and have you got enough sort of dried food and pasta and tinned food in your cupboards just in case things go wrong, which, you know, and potential power problems as well.
Yeah, I was reading that today. There's potential blackouts, rolling blackouts. I think that last happened in the 70s, was it?
I do remember doing homework by candlelight. By candlelight, yeah, that old, yeah.
Well, that does make us sound old, doesn't it? Right, let's take a quick break. Vincent and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you and with me, the fabulous Vincent Moss, former political editor. We're looking at the papers, Vincent. The Times, Burnham will keep going until channel crossings are stopped. Andy Burnham has vowed to eradicate channel crossings as French police warned about their ability to stop these so-called mega dinghies that we saw. That was in the papers this morning, actually. We saw just yesterday the 230 migrants arrived in Dover on Monday aboard one vessel. So he says he's vowed to change our tactics to tackle smuggling gangs and to keep going until the crossings are stopped. I can't help thinking he's over-promising again.
Well, he's got to say that, but I think, as you say, it's a very big promise.
It's a huge
saying
promise.
We'll do our best and we'll cut the numbers. I mean, where the government has rather sort of made a big play of is the numbers. Although these astonishingly large boats, these mega boats with 230 people, as you say, the numbers are down year on year by about 40% at this point of the year. Now, whether they stay that way with the calm weather and the huge boats that are now coming over that are much, much bigger than they were previously, let's see. But yes, Andy Burnham's language does seem to be talking about carrying on until he eradicates the channel crossings. Now, that's a very bold pledge.
That's a big pledge. I mean, it really is. But I suppose, I mean, this is the thing as well, because I thought he wasn't going to try to out-reform reform, but that is the language that is trying to out-reform reform, because reformers said, we're going to stop the boats, we're going to send the Navy in, we're going to do all these things. They've all been debunked as being impossible. But this is the same language, and rather than being cautious about it, it's the same with the PC Harper stuff. These are born for U-turns. And that is something he cannot afford to be seen to be doing.
No, he's been under a lot of pressure to talk about migration. He avoided it for his first sort of couple of weeks, and he's finally talked about it. And he hasn't put a timeline on it, which is important, I think, because he hasn't said, I will get the numbers down by the end of the year, or I will get the numbers down by... He's talked about carrying on with the scheme and avoiding a timeline and stopping crossings, saying he would rather promise to people what I know I can do and what I know I can deliver. Well, yes, that's fine, but he does seem to be saying he will...
Nobody else has been able to deliver this since Brexit, since 10 years.
It's incredibly tough, and no other government's had any success on it, so we'll see. I mean, the best thing that could happen for him is a change in the weather, and that looks some way off, because that traditionally disrupts these crossings at the moment. If you're getting boats that can take 230 people in one crossing, the numbers are going to go up pretty quickly over this, what looks like a very calm period over the next few days. So it's one of his biggest... I mean, he's got a huge in tray of things to get on with. He's had a lot of sort of small cost of living announcements that he's going to continue making throughout the week, things about tackling subscriptions that you've forgotten to cancel, that sort of thing. All fairly small beer, really. This is one of the big ticket items that he's got to resolve, and he's talking the right language on it. But it is a bit of a hostage to fortune, because it's been traditionally very, very hard for governments to resolve this.
Yeah, and it's not like they haven't been trying. Maybe not hard enough, but they're big words. And as usual, and I was saying this to Angus Walker just an hour ago, that I'm really getting very tired of words without backup. You know, we're hearing it from Kemi Badenoch, we're hearing it from Nigel Farage, we're hearing it from Andy Burnham. They're just speaking, but nobody's saying, this is how we're going to do it. This is what these are the costs. You know, even Farage talking about prisons yesterday. We're going to have 12,000 places in Nightingale prisons. Well, what is that going to cost? You know, how quickly can you get that done? When will we see those come on stream? Once you're Prime Minister, if you're Prime Minister, you know. That's what I want to hear, and I know that's what the public want to hear as well. I am tired of these statements being thrown out there. I promise that I'll stop the boats. Well, tell me how, when, why, what it's going to cost, and then I might start believing you. None of them are doing it.
They're not. It's an auction of promises, isn't it? And one of the problems that Andy Burnham faces with the Channel crossings is, of course, these people smugglers people traffickers are moving further and further away to launch the boats. So some of them are potentially coming from, 200 kilometres of coastline that they could be coming from. So it's not just the kind of Calais area that they're coming from now. They're coming from further afield, and to make their margins and make their profits, they want more people on these boats. And every time the government tries to find a solution with the French, who are variously criticised for not doing enough, the traffickers and the gangs behind this come up with a different solution.
Of course they do. Yeah, I mean they don't even care if people survive, so they're just getting them on the boats. Well, it's again, it's a wait and see, but I want to hear more details from any politician, please. That'd be nice. 1 in 10 GP partners earn at least 250 grand a year. Hundreds of family doctors are earning at least 300,000 a year from the NHS, their take-home pay having increased by more than 20% in real terms over the past decade. Do we care about this?
I think it's a bit confusing in one way, because I think if you're a GP partner, I'm not an expert in this, and you run your own practice...
It's your own business.
Exactly, so there are some costs involved with that as well. So I'm not sure if you are, it says, the Times headline says, hundreds of family doctors earning at least £300,000 a year from the NHS. Now, they may be claiming £300,000 a year from the NHS, but some of that may be paying staff, maybe the cost of the business. So it may not be as clear-cut as it seems. But one of the issues is that GPs are pretty well paid. They have pretty good pensions. And as we know, in the wider healthcare system. There have been a lot of strikes recently, and pay has gone up, and it's a question of how sustainable it is. But there's a shortage of GPs, and one of the ways you retain people is you ensure that they feel they're well enough paid. And unless things have changed, I think there's still a shortage of GPs, and we need more of them. And one of the things the government is trying to do is encourage people to get treated in the community by their GPs and not clog up A&Es. So they have a key part to play along with pharmacists, and it's important that they're there. So I think you probably want to know a bit more about the detail of those figures before we get too outraged about GPs earning £250,000 a year.
Yeah, and like you said, they do run it as their own business, and they're being asked to do ever more care for, you know, and checks and you know, I'm constantly getting calls from my GP to go in for this or that or a blood test or a, you know, because they're doing all the preventative work as well. So, you know, I don't have a problem with that, because those GPs that are earning that sort of money into their business, of course, that depends on how many patients they've got as well, because they get paid per patient per year. And that is the money that they make from the NHS. Well, the NHS hasn't got any choice but to do that, because that's the way the system is set up. So the more patients they've got and the more patients they see and the more treatments that they give and blood tests and all of those, they get paid for those. They're working.
Yes, we want that, because the more blood tests and cancer tests that people take at an earlier stage,
blood pressure tests, they get paid for that. You know, trying to stop people smoking, all of those things. And I think if it was anybody else running a successful business, you'd be going, well, good on you. But
and early diagnosis is the key. So if they're diagnosing things early, then good for them.
Good for them. Extra safeguards are needed for early release, says the police. This is hardly surprising. Police chiefs have told Andy Burnham that he must ensure the public are protected from thousands of violent and serious offenders who are set to be granted early release from prisons. And I was reading the other day that the police are saying that they will have fewer police available for actual policing because they'll be watching these early release criminals.
Well, it's catch-22, isn't it? I mean, the government and the prison service and the police are under pressure to release a lot of people early to make space in the prisons because it's nearly at capacity. And this has been the big fuss over the two of the three killers of PC Andrew Harper, which has been dominating the media for days now. But the problem is, of course, if you're releasing lots of potentially dangerous and criminals early, then the chances of a lot of them reoffending and taking up police time are pretty big. And I think the recall rate is already at a new high in terms of prisoners that have been recalled recently. And the police are warning, all 43 chief constables in England and Wales are saying they're concerned about the risk of more grave offending undermining public safety, because so many people are going to be released early and they're going to be under pressure to try and monitor all of these people.
Yeah, and also, like you said, if there's a recall, that means there's a warrant out. The police have then got to track these people down, rearrest them and put them in jail. So, I mean, it just seems to be pushing the problem down the road, as usual. It's like not fixing the problem, it's just passing the problem on to somebody else.
Yeah, and like the probation service, who are sort of stretched and underfunded.
Well, they're thinking of going on
view.
strike, aren't they?
Well, yes, because they're seeing all these people coming out early they're going to have to manage, and they probably haven't got the bandwidth to do it. So you've got a sort of perfect storm of overcrowded prisons, not enough prison officers, an overstretched probation service, and a police service that's saying it can't cope with it either.
Yeah.
So
it's just literally just moving the problem down the road a little bit further. The Daily Telegraph, middle-class areas must house migrants. This is Andy Burnham, has said that middle-class families should play their part by accepting asylum seeker accommodations near their homes. The Prime Minister said he would work to ensure that the poorest communities did not have to take the lion's share of accommodation for asylum seekers. Again, this makes no fiscal sense, because poorer areas have cheaper accommodations. So are you saying that you're going to deliberately try to hack off the middle classes by paying a lot of money to rent in a wealthier area? It's fiscal stupidity.
absolutely, it doesn't make sense, because I'm sure he'd probably go and find an apartment in Mayfair or Kensington and put some asylum seekers in. But it would cost a fortune.
It would cost an absolute fortune.
And you could probably get some HMOs in the northwest and other areas, which is where there seems to be complaints that areas like Wigan, for example, are having a huge number of HMOs, where apparently the number of HMOs in the borough of Wigan rose by 160%. Between 2021 and 2025. And that is a big rise. But obviously property is cheaper to rent and HMOs are cheaper to rent, buy and build in cheaper areas. So it doesn't make sense for the taxpayer to be putting them in more expensive areas, and that would cause an outrage in itself.
That would just be that's just the politics of the left, isn't it? Just to go, right, we're going to stick it to the middle classes. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense.
And I think also what Andy Burnham's probably alluding to as well is there's been a huge fuss about some of these ex-army bases or current army bases being repurposed in leafy suburban areas like Crowborough in Sussex, and I think there's another one in Oxfordshire, and putting migrants into those communities. So he's probably alluding a bit to the fact that rather than those middle-class areas protesting about the use of these army bases, which were arguably much more suitable than hotels that many people were outraged about, those sort of communities must be happy to house migrants as well. But of course some of these areas are very small villages, and the army bases could double or treble potentially even, or be a significant number of extra people in their very small communities. So it's again one of those issues where nobody is really happy, it seems, or lots of people complain about having migrants near them, but they've got to go somewhere.
And this is the cost of closing down the migrant hotels that everybody wanted to be closed down. Since the election, the number of migrants living in privately rented houses and flats has increased by more than 7,000 to 68,538. The highest concentration of HMOs in the UK is in London, which accounts for around a third of the total. Although contractors responsible for setting up dispersal housing usually choose lower income areas where the rent is cheaper, of course. A property is classed an HMO if it houses three or more unrelated people, and the label can apply to houses in the private rented sector. And they've become a popular choice for asylum contractors because they're cheaper to rent than hotels. So, you know, while they're all still coming across here, then you don't put them in hotels, then where are you going to put them? That was always on with people going, oh, we need to shut down the hotels. It's like, well, they're not just going to vaporise, they're not going to disappear into thin air. They will end up in a house next door to you.
Well, that's right, and this is the problem, is that virtually every community there are a significant group of people in it saying, we don't want them next to us. Well, you've got to find somewhere to put them until they're processed. Yeah, exactly. And the police unite to fight early release. Unprecedented letter reveals forces' anger at the inability to keep PC Harper's killers in prison. It appears that this government believe they've found a way. That's certainly the rumours that we're hearing, that they found a possible answer to this, but I can't help thinking that it's going to be a bit of a muddle. Well, it was always going to happen. There was such a huge, nearly 1 million people have signed a petition saying that these 2 of the 3 killers of PC Harper shouldn't be released. So huge pressure on the government from the police, the public and everywhere else. And the inevitable U-turn seems to be happening because Andy Burnham has promised that they won't be coming out early effectively. But it's not entirely clear how he's going to deliver on that. The 3 ways it's expected that he will deliver is by sort of deporting even more foreign prisoners, of which there are about 10,000, I think, of the 87,000 in prison, using women's prisons, which make up about 3,000 of the population, and getting rid of other
how do you use women's prison and keep women safe? You know, what are you going to do? Because there are still 1,000 violent women. So what are you going to do? You're going to have a brick wall down the middle of a corridor? I don't know how you...
Well,
I want to hear details.
Exactly, all of the details of how these things are going to work.
I know.
So they need to create an awful lot more capacity very, very quickly. Or the other option is excluding certain categories of prisoners, but then you can't just exclude some.
No, it has to be the whole category.
So the whole category, and that's the problem, which
and
is
then there'll
initially
be lawsuits now.
Yes, exactly, which is initially why the killers weren't excluded, because it would have meant, I think, 600 or 1,000 people would have had to go out. If they'd excluded them, they'd have to keep another 600 or 1,000 people in prison longer. So it's really, really difficult. But yet again, the pressure on the government, this is what Keir Starmer found, is that he would try and hold a position and there'd be such an outcry about it, he'd have to change his position. And it looks like that's what Andy Burnham's having to do, certainly on this early release.
Just be accused of U-turning again and again, so we'll see. Quick break, and Vincent and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie, and with me is Vincent Moss, former political editor, going through the papers, and the Daily Mirror and the Sun, if we put those two together, on the front pages there, it's a really sad story about Lucy Davis, the actress, who was she played Dawn in The Office, which was a brilliant programme, Ricky Gervais programme. She says, "I have incurable cancer, but I'm at peace." She said, "It's far harder for my family." She's such a great actress, and that is really sad, isn't it? Very young.
Yeah, terribly sad news. I mean, only 53, and pictures of her there saying, as you say, "I'm not scared, I'm at peace, and it's far harder for my family." And she's vowed to live life as to the full and say in as fun a way as I possibly can, which is a sort of really moving and touching sort of attitude to it, because I would imagine most people would just be devastated by it, but she seems determined to just live her life to the full for as long as she has. But just astonishing, really, at how serious it is. I mean, it
really
just seems
serious.
to have spread to her bones and is now not treatable by chemotherapy.
Yeah, it was a breast cancer that has gone to her bones. Of course, she was the daughter of Jasper Carrott.
Yes,
great comedian. So thoughts go to her and her family and friends. It's really sad to see that. The Daily Star as well, Office Lucy, I don't know how long I have, so that's on the Star front page as well. The Daily Mail going really big on Burnham middle-class areas must take more migrants. You know, as we've said, you know, I don't know how they're going to afford the properties unless he just does it through, not spite. I don't know whether that would be the right word.
Well, I think, one, as you say, the properties will be more expensive in those areas. There are these army bases that tend to be quite often on the edge of some of these leafy rural areas.
Yeah.
But it's also towns and cities have the housing that is more suitable to HMOs because they tend to be those larger, big, old Victorian properties. If you go to smaller towns and villages, they're only smaller houses and less suitable. And also, from a sort of practical point of view, they're less near transport links, they're less near the things that are needed. And I'm not saying, obviously, the first priority should be what the asylum seekers and the migrants want, but
But they
don't
need
want
to be near shops,
exactly.
and they won't be driving, so they'll need to be close to some amenities, presumably. Otherwise, you know.
And the last place they'll want to be is a leafy, quaint English village. That would be, so it doesn't work for them either.
Yeah, it doesn't work for them either. So that's the Daily Mail. Andy U-turns on early release plan. Andy Burnham's crime crisis intensified after he gave in to growing anger over Labour's early jail release plan. Has he, though? I mean, he did state that... Is it a U-turn? I mean, he did state that he wanted this to change, and I'm not sure where the U-turn is in this.
Well, I think initially he said that there was no alternative in terms of the capacity issues other than to let people out early under certain categories. And now he is saying that these 2 of the 3 killers will not be let out early, but he hasn't really sort of said quite how that's going to happen. It's now really on the Justice Secretary, Alex Norris, to free up the places and create a world within which they cannot be freed early, and quite how he's going to do that. The areas you mentioned, like using women's prisons or sending home more foreign criminals that have been convicted somehow, or even just building extra prison cells within the existing prison estate, which is another possibility that's already potentially happening in certain areas, is you sort of plonk a few blocks within prison yards that already exist, or build a new wing.
But again, as Angus Walker was saying earlier, that this is a bit whack-a-mole, because at the moment it's PC Andrew Harper that's on the front page, and we're all appalled at these 2 grinning morons that were involved in his killing, you know, getting out after serving just a third of their sentence. But you know, if they're stopped from being released, then there'll be some domestic abuser on the front page, or there'll be another manslaughter killer on the front page, and the public will rightly get behind keeping them in jail. This is a really hard sell for any government to the public. It might sound okay on paper, but this isn't a paper issue. This is people's lives. This is victims. This is terror. You know, these are visceral things that we can all get behind.
Very much so. No victim wants to see their person that put them in, either they were a victim of assault or battery or GBH or whatever it was. Nobody wants to see that person out early, and they will have mentally steeled themselves the idea that somebody who they were told was going to get 7, 8, 9 years in prison was going to do that sort of time and was not going to get out in a significantly shorter time frame, especially victims of domestic violence and abuse and that sort of thing. So it will be a huge problem, and one that's going to go on and on for years. I mean, at the end of the day, the government needs to find a way of either locking people up for less time, ensuring people don't reoffend as much, or building an awful lot of extra prison capacity, which is not really a feasible solution, because if you keep locking people up, you're just going to need more and more prison capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, and these are all really expensive choices. The FT, I was reading this yesterday, Bashar al-Assad has been sentenced to death in his absence. This is the former leader of Syria, the ousted leader who ran off and hid in Moscow and with his friend Putin. And it was the first, sentencing was the first against Assad and members of his inner circle, including his brother, since the family's 5 decades in power came to an end in... This is obviously for crimes against humanity, and he has been sentenced to death in his absence, but unlikely. This is after 14 years civil war, which 500,000 people were killed. And he was convicted of crimes including premeditated murder, torture and arbitrary detention. So it's good news that he's been sentenced to death, but unlikely that he'll ever see that
Oh yes, I mean, if ever he needed an incentive not to ever leave Moscow, wherever he's hidden,
he's got 3 apartments.
One now. Really,
he's got 3 apartments in Moscow. Yeah, because he took all the gold with him as well, didn't he?
Yes.
You saw the planes leaving Syria before he did, with all the money on it. So yeah, he has been sentenced to death, along with others actually who were actually in the court at the time for crimes against humanity. I mean, he really was an evil SOB. Eclipse spectators face astronomical hotel room rates in Spain and Iceland. Why, when you can just stand out on the street and watch it?
Because I think it's better there.
It lasts longer there, doesn't it?
It does, and it's the purest version of it. I think the best place to see the eclipse is in Spain. So, unsurprisingly, for all these sort of events, Spain is apparently putting up hotel prices, as is Iceland, and some of the rooms are priced at more than $1,000 on average, which is up more than 140% on the same date last year.
Wow.
So, a bit of price gouging there, but it is pretty literally a once-in-a-lifetime event, I guess. So if you're into eclipses, then I guess you have to pay a little bit extra to see it at its finest.
Yeah, I suppose. Will you be looking at the eclipse tomorrow safely?
Well, if I had the glasses, I probably would, but I haven't managed to get any of the glasses. So unless I'm going to do something clever with a kitchen colander and a bit of paper.
The colander, that's it. Or you can get a kitchen roll holder and paint the inside of that black, apparently.
I'll try that.
Try that, and then on one end, because John was telling me this yesterday, on one end you put tin foil and you make a little tiny hole in it, and the other end you put greaseproof paper and put a hole in it, and you can look through, and that will protect you from. It becomes a pinhole camera, apparently.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Please look that up if you're planning on doing that. I may have missed a few stages.
Yes, don't blame us for any.
Don't blame us for any solar blindness. But yeah, that's. I think it's around 5 o'clock here, isn't it, tomorrow?
Yes, I think is it 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, early evening tomorrow.
Yeah,
anyway.
early evening on Wednesday. So that's for some people that's really, really exciting. Right, let's take a quick break, and Vincent, I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is the wonderful Vincent Moss, former political editor, going through the pages. Forget Black Friday, today is Black Wednesday, and a scramble by sky gazers to buy specs to safely watch tonight's solar eclipse has proved a money-making bonanza for shops. I'm not sure a bonanza because they're just paper glasses, aren't they? I'm not sure they're going to be making anybody rich.
No, but I think they have sold out, so I don't know what the profit margin is or how much they are, but I know that everywhere everybody was trying to get them was struggling to find them, so they have proved a bit elusive. And I think the Metro does talk about somebody who'd queued for a couple of hours and left empty-handed, so they've obviously been pretty hard to get. So I think people will be searching online for a few DIY solutions because it looks as though it's a bit late to try and get hold of them in time for the eclipse now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit. So is the solar eclipse glasses, which was high at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, where people queued for hours to grab a pair. The venue had to stop selling them online after finding itself inundated with an unprecedented volume of orders. Well, it's good that people are interested.
It's good they're interested, but it is the definition of a single-use item, potentially, isn't it? Unless you're going to be around in about, when's the next one, 2090 or something, is it? Quite a long time.
Yeah, quite a long time. Let's go to The Guardian now. And The Guardian is talking, Burnham plan to keep PC killers in jail could backfire, warns unions. Andy Burnham's plan to stop the early release of PC Harper's killers and the other serious offenders could increase the risk of some inmates being released by mistake.
Well, yes, I mean, the Prison Governors Association and others are sort of warning that when you do these things quickly against a tight deadline, there's a more risk of people being released too early or the wrong people being released, which we've seen happen in the past. And it does happen a fair bit anyway, but it did spike a lot when the government was forced in this last round of early releases to let people go. I just don't
understand, again, why they can't wear rubber bracelets with a QR code on them, and you scan it and you go, sorry, mate, you're not Joe Bloggs. Get back inside.
That'd be a very good idea, wouldn't you? You'd think they'd be able to do something like that, but it seems to be quite an old-fashioned system that seems to go wrong a fair bit.
It's all paperwork still.
And they're worried that the wrong people will be let out. I mean, how hard can it be, you would think, but it happens. It
happens all the time, and that's the stupidity of it. But it's just absolutely ridiculous that they keep accidentally letting out the wrong people. Madness.
Yeah, and also the prison governors are warning that one of the problems is that this sort of much-cited idea that you could remove a lot of overseas prisoners is likely to prove difficult because they're saying that some of them will resist this and there'll be legal challenges, so that won't be as easy as they think.
No, even if they cancel the ECHR, even if that were done. But I mean, it's and also we've already hit this problem this year already as to what is a foreign prisoner, and also, you know, if the country of origin don't take the back, there was that Pakistani rapist, wasn't there, who they wanted to send back to Pakistan, and Pakistan said, well, no, he's been with you since he was 3 years old. So is he really a foreign national? Or he was young, I can't remember what age he was, but he was very young when he first came to this country. So is that a foreign national, somebody with dual passports? So that becomes a very complicated issue then, particularly if the country doesn't want to take them back.
Well, if they refuse them, or the other issue is if somebody's committed a very serious offence, I mean, if you're the victim of that, do you just want to see them deported where they may just wander free off the plane and not be put back into prison? So then there's no punishment for the crime, which is an equally bad thing.
Yeah, no, terrible. And then they just come back anyway. Yeah. The Guardian's also talking about Richard Tice, Reform's UK's deputy leader, has been accused of using nasty tactics in an attempt to intimidate journalists and deflect attention from his own financial affairs after issuing a legal threat to The Guardian. The letter was sent from his lawyers, and a Guardian correspondent was singled out for her reporting on a series of Tice's financial transactions that were referred to the National Crime Agency. Tice is now suing the National Crime Agency, claiming that the information could only have come from an officer within the agency. Well, that's interesting as well.
Well, there's a lot of scrutiny of Reform's finances, and they are getting very, very grumpy about it. And rather than saying the finances are legitimate or they're not legitimate, they seem to be resorting to legal letters and threatening people for asking questions about their financial affairs. So, and now they're polling so well, and potentially a party of government and the rest of it, they're facing proper scrutiny for the first time, and arguably should have faced it many years earlier, and are now not very happy about that level of that scrutiny.
And on the front page there, it is on Wednesday, it's 5 years since the Taliban returned to full power, and they've tightened their grip on Afghanistan. I mean, it's just horrific what has happened to women and girls in Afghanistan in the last 5 years, and I'm planning to carry out an interview tomorrow on Wednesday about what's happened to Afghanistan in the 5 years since we abandoned it.
Oh, that'd be fascinating.
It'd be really interesting, especially for the women and girls that are there. The I paper. Summer 2026 will be the UK's hottest since records began. The price of bread, broccoli and steak said to rise as drought pushes up costs.
Well, apparently it doesn't need to be very hot at all for the rest of August to break all the records.
Wow.
It looks as though it's going to be far hotter than 1976. But, of course, as the eye is highlighting, there are huge problems with that because the drought means that farmers' yields are down. That means food prices are likely to go up. Vegetables, fruit, bread, cereal, all set to go up. And that's just sort of piling the pressure on the food and drink manufacturers who are already sort of facing rising costs because of the war in Ukraine and Iran, which the eye is quite rightly highlighting. And that's one of the big issues that will be facing people for the rest of the year, I think, is just continuing spiralling price rises.
Yeah, and there's also been reporting on what we can expect from vegetables, that they'll be much smaller. Things like cauliflowers will be much smaller than we're used to buying because they just haven't been able to get the water and the nutrients that they need to produce these bigger crops. And things like potatoes as well are going to be much smaller. They're saying you'd be hard pressed to find a potato the size that you'd need to do a jacket potato, for example, that they'll be much smaller.
Yes, and the grain yields as well. Everything is going to be sort of smaller and more expensive as a result of the heat and also the lack of water. Just the farmers could have been able to sort of look after the crops better if they'd had more water, but there just wasn't any stored in large parts of the country because of the lack of reservoirs and
farmers haven't been able to use water because they've been told they're not allowed to because of droughts. So we've got a real problem, and especially with fruits, with vegetables in the ground, that they are going to be not up to par, and we may start seeing more of that wonky fruit and veg, which that was the EU. That was one of the things I thought the EU did absolutely the wrong thing in saying that all carrots had to be straight and all cucumbers had to be straight. And, I've got friends who grow these things. I've never seen a straight cucumber come out of their gardens. They're always completely curled up. So, and they're perfectly edible. I mean, once you cut them up and chew them, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they look like. It's just bonkers to me that all these vegetables have to be, the perfect shape and colour and size and everything. It's just, you chop them up and put them in a stew.
And they taste great.
And they taste much better, actually.
Yeah, they do.
I really do. And then you sometimes get really rude ones, which is terrific. So the stuff of That's Life was made of, wasn't it? Rude vegetables.
It
do you
was.
Remember
There's
that?
special. I'm trying to remember the person at the end of the show. Was he called Cyril or something? There was the man.
Oh yes,
there was one man in particular.
It was Cyril.
Who had the rude vegetables.
The rude
wasn't
vegetables at the end of the program. We used to see them all the time. And this, I wanted just to pull us back to the Telegraph, if I can. Public lavatories are set to enforce surge pricing. I mean, literally, these councils are looking at anything they can charge us more for. Spending a penny would cost a lot more at the busiest times under local authority plans for dynamic pricing in public lavatories. Cash-strapped councils have opened the door to using real-time data to move prices up and down according to demand in public lavatories for the first time.
It's crazy, isn't it? You couldn't make it up.
Just stop.
What are you supposed to do? Hold it in until it's an off-peak time?
Yeah, wait. OK, 5 more minutes. It's just stop it.
It's like getting the train, isn't it? You have to wait for the first one after a certain time. You'd have to be standing, there'd be queues outside the loos while people are waiting for the off-peak loo period.
I'm so sick of it. They're just finding more and more ways to charge us more and more money. Vincent Moss, thank you very much indeed for coming in, former political editor there. Just again to go through the front pages for you, Andy Burnham saying that middle-class areas must take more migrants. This is on the front page of the Daily Mail and other papers, so there's a big stories about that. And Burnham's plan to keep PC's killers in jail could backfire, warns the unions. That's in The Guardian. And the tragic news that has covered quite a few front pages of Lucy Davis has bravely revealed that she has terminal cancer, but has said, "I'm not scared, I'm at peace." This, of course, is the Office star who played Dawn Tinsley alongside Martin Freeman and Ricky Gervais. She said, "Any grieving is for my family. It's harder for them than for me." She vowed to live in as fun a way as she possibly can as Jasper Carrott's daughter. So thoughts go to her. I'm sure that Jeremy Kyle will be covering those stories on The Breakfast Show in the morning. Right, coming up, though, it is now time for you to talk back, so get ready.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
Our fifth Prime Minister in 4 years. Blimey. And, well, look, we want him to succeed. But will this one be any different? Andy Burnham, the new head honcho, the speed this all happened, I know this is a well-trodden debate already, is actually breathtaking. 1 minute he was Mayor of Greater Manchester. What, a month and a bit ago he wasn't even an MP. The next he's holding keys to number 10 without the country ever really having a chance to scrutinise him in a prospective prime ministerial nothing at all. We really know very little.
I think Burnham has to walk a fine line. I think that's probably what's going on, because if he were to sweep into Downing Street and say, "I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to do things different."
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and I am keen on hearing your voices in this hour as we learn that the cost to you and me for of paying wind farms to switch off when Britain's electricity grid can't cope has exceeded £1 billion already this year, and it's on track for an annual record. Most of the cost comes from paying gas-fired power plants near urban areas to fire up to cover for wind turbines in remote locations that have to be turned off because of insufficient cabling. I mean, this is nonsense, isn't it? We're being asked to pay. We're paying twice, by the way. So we have to pay for the windmills to be switched off. We have to pay the company who runs those for losing what we would have paid them for the electricity, basically. So we have to pay them for the electricity, and then we have to pay for the gas. So that's why it's gone up so much, because of the US and US and Iran war pushing up oil prices. But still, it looks like that we are putting the cart before the horse. We have all of these means of generating this electricity, but none of the means to store it, to save it, or to transport it to areas that might need it. The owner and the CEO of Octopus Energy, Greg Jackson, he has suggested that what should happen is dynamic pricing. So in other words, if you live near a wind farm and there's overcapacity, you should get that energy at very, very low rates, rather than switching off the energy supply. I mean, it just makes literally no sense to me. I would be happy with that, but Keir Starmer, in the last Labour government as leader, he said no, that would create a postcode lottery of energy. I'm not the sort of person who would be jealous of that. I'd be like, well, you have to live near a wind farm. Go ahead, have cheaper fuel. I don't care. I mean, if somebody else is benefiting from it, good. It doesn't have to be me benefiting from it. It can be somebody else benefiting from it, right? I'm sure most of us feel that way, rather than the waste of just switching them off. So I want to know if going green makes you see red. Do you think that this is too early? We're not ready yet for this. Look, it's the only answer. Green energy, sustainable energy, is the only answer for the future of this country, of security, of energy security. We cannot be beholden to areas like the Middle East forever, and the absolute mess in that region, thanks largely to the war in Iran. And that is going to continue, and the Strait of Hormuz will never go back to being a free waterway, so those costs are going to go up. We've got the El Mendeb Strait there, that could be closed by the Houthis at any moment. That cuts off the Suez Canal, that cuts off the oil pipe. We could see oil rising again and again and again. Some are predicting as high as $200 a barrel. I mean, that is catastrophic. So if we're looking at that situation, we need energy security, but we're just not ready for it. It seems to me that all governments have just completely failed to prepare us for a future of not just energy security, water security and food security as well. These are the basic requirements of any government to provide, and all of them have let us down. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you make of this? Do you think that we should be taking it more slowly with green energy? Do you think that we would be prepared to pay more, because it'll have to come from you and me, in order to improve the situation so that we actually benefit from green energy? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Would you mind if somebody got cheaper energy because they live next door to a solar farm or a wind farm? I can't imagine why anybody would mind. Anyway, because it's summer, we're doing special things this hour as well, and I want to talk about what is going on in the US. We're going to do a weekly update in the summer, looking at what's happening in the US at the moment, because what happens there happens here. It's just we just have to wait. So it always comes here. Joining me to discuss some of these stories, I'm delighted to say, is the fabulous Bill Keeler, host of First News with Keeler on WIBX Radio in New York. And it's a tragedy you're not in the studio with me, Bill.
Oh, I enjoyed it. I do enjoy hearing you have the same argument we have here over clean energy and electric, and does it? But I actually run an extension cord and connect to my neighbor's house. They don't know it yet, but
and that's free energy. That's not just clean energy, Bill.
It's free. Someone needs to benefit, and it should be me. So.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Let's have a look at some of these stories. Something that's really fascinating to me, because it's either a brilliant thing or it's a really bad thing, if you want a democratic overthrow of the Republicans in the midterms, and that is the left-wing political outsider Abdul al-Sayed, projected to be Michigan's first Muslim Democratic senator. And as brilliant as he appears to be, and is he going to turn people off, the independents off, from voting Democrat, because he may be too left-wing, he may be too left even for the Democrats?
Well, they're going to work really hard. The Republicans will work really hard to make him the Nancy Pelosi, if you will, of the Democratic Party. He is the Democratic Party. But actually, where he is, there's a large Muslim population. Now, the question is, how far left is he? He struggles when it comes, very much like we had with the Tea Party. So one would say, well, Republicans, there's that white nationalism that's connected to Republicans, and Trump has always had a hard time denouncing them because you still want those votes. So on the other side here, with Sayed, he is having a difficult time denouncing some of the far left, the radicals, who might even say something like 9/11, America deserved it. So this is, this is just not what the Democrats are looking for right now.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, you live under Mandami. You live in New York. I mean, he was seen as being too radical. I mean, Donald Trump's using words like jihadist to describe al-Sayed, which is clearly a racist and disgraceful thing to say. But you know, Mandami was considered to be far too left-wing and communist, but he seems to be a very communist being the word that Donald Trump is using. But he seems to have been a very successful mayor. But there was concern that he was going to be that they're being seen as being too left and possibly too brown.
It was obviously the president is using al-Sayed's full name, Mohammed, very much like he did with Obama, and it is a dog whistle. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And Mandami, it is interesting. I said they were crying wolf. This was going to be just horrific. It was going to take New York so far to the left. And I had somebody the other day say, it's still coming. You wait. Once he gets comfortable, it's coming. But the fact is, so far, it hasn't happened. And I almost feel like when you build it up and you build it up, and then it's not as bad as you have built up, that works against you. So it'll be very interesting to see how America reacts to this. And it's not socialism, remember, it's communism. That's the word.
I think because actually what al-Sayed is saying is pretty much a democratic dogma anyway. He's saying that he wants people to have, a workable healthcare system and to stop people going bankrupt with getting sick. So he's not saying anything particularly radical or non-democratic, but it could backfire on them, couldn't it, if too many seemingly left-leaning socialists, communists as Trump will call them, are becoming popular. That could scare off the independent vote. It won't scare off the Democrat vote, but it will scare off potentially the independent votes who are leaning more towards the Democrats and away from the Republicans.
Well, especially right now with everything going on in the country and in the world with Trump, you have those moderates that may have voted for Trump, moderate Democrats who may be ready to say enough is enough. And now along comes this. I am a firm believer that the argument is racist, and I'm a firm believer that it will work.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Sadly, I tend to agree, at least with Trump's base, but anything would work with them, wouldn't they? But this guy's a doctor, a community health official, Rhodes Scholar, a dedicated Michiganer, and you know he has the credentials, but like you say, the racism, the dog whistling will sadly work. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is this extraordinary situation you've got in America at the moment, this sort of anti-vaccine rhetoric that is going on at the moment, and an executive order has been signed. It's not an order as much as a sort of recommendation, but this is very scary. You've got RFK, who's a well-known anti-vaxxer, right? And you've got measles outbreaks across America. Children have died, and yet Donald Trump is saying that he's casting doubt over the safety of the MMR vaccine. Multiple studies have found no connection between the shots and autism. And when a reporter asked for evidence, because Donald Trump said that the MMR vaccine could be quite lethal if given at once, and a reporter pushed back and said, where's your evidence for the lethal claim? And Donald Trump said, what I've heard is that there are some people that say that it is.
Yeah. I think this is incredibly large. This is a big issue, obviously, and certainly there are plenty of anti-vaxxers out there, and what Trump has done is basically given them the green light that it's okay. It can be a part of the mainstream. But I find that this is Trump, and there's this inability to trust experts, inability to trust science, to trust medicine, to trust military experts. Believe me, there was plenty of pushback on Iran. We are in a tough position because he knew better, or he surrounded himself with people who told him he knew better.
Yeah.
That's the problem we're living in, and it just so happens to affect potential vaccines and put really children and people's lives in danger here.
Yeah, I mean, with RFK as well as being your health secretary, I mean, it is an extraordinary combination, isn't it? I mean, I thought that autism was caused by paracetamol. Anyway, didn't RFK come out and say that there was some link there? So, and that he was going to find out what caused autism within a couple of months. He did, in his words, find it out, and it was taking paracetamol when you're pregnant. So what has MMR got to do with it?
And I have to go back to the statement. I watched this interview that you referenced, having the president of the United States say, my evidence is some people have told me they think it's true.
Yeah, that's it. That's the scientific evidence. Some people have told me that it's lethal.
I just, when I heard that, my jaw dropped, and then I remembered it's dropped several times over the course of the last, well, in the several months, and then even before, but this is worse. It's worse now.
I mean, I think my jaw dropped several times a day with Donald Trump. But this is very dangerous, isn't it? And a lot of people are coming out and saying, please don't pay any attention to this. But there are federal laws that can protect parents, aren't there, here? Because schools federally decide what vaccines children are supposed to have before they can start going to school, don't they? So at a federal level, people could ignore this.
Well, and when you think about it, they could have ignored it before all of this. So if you're someone who doesn't believe in vaccines and you've come up with a religious reason or really any reason, you can homeschool. Your kids do not have to have vaccines. So all we're doing is casting a shadow of doubt for those that may have been ready to give their kids the vaccines that are recommended. And now when the president says it could be dangerous, you're a parent. What do you don't know who to trust anymore.
No, and if you're told not to trust the specialists or the scientists, then that is an impossible situation. But just to remind people here that there was a study in Denmark in 2019 that looked at 657,461 children. It was one of the biggest research moments in time on MMR vaccine and autism, and concluded that the data did not support the MMR vaccine causing or even triggering autism. So that was a huge study, the biggest of its kind. There have been 800 studies in total, Bill, and none of them have found any link to the MMR vaccine.
I'm sorry, I just don't believe them.
Yeah, no, all 800 of them. Yeah.
That's what we hear. I don't believe them. I think they're lying to us, all of them.
All of them, all around the world, 800 studies, absolutely extraordinary. Trump's paranoia. This has become a huge story, hasn't it? Because there's some footage. Donald Trump secretly swapped planes as he left a NATO summit in Turkey last month. Now, we knew he'd done that, didn't we? We knew that he'd done that. He was allegedly supposed to have switched from his free plane from Qatar onto another Air Force One plane, but he switched again.
Switched again and was a military vehicle that apparently he flew on and then merged with reporters. So at the end of the day, all of these pool reporters on Air Force One, thinking the president is flying with them, he wasn't, and they were basically decoys.
I mean, that to me is shocking.
What a story.
That is a heck of a story when you've got the President of the United States who was, there's images there of the catering van that he was apparently bundled into. So you see him go up the ladder and obviously he comes down the other side or something. And is bundled into a catering van and moved to a military aircraft, leaving, having been told there was a threat against his life, apparently, leaving reporters and his staff on board what would have been Air Force One had he been on it, flying, thinking that the president was on board as decoys. It is shocking to me.
As decoys, absolutely right, and it is shocking. This story is really just beginning to unfold here, and it will be interesting to see how they explain it away. But at the end of the day, everyone was lied to. And I understand the importance of protecting the president of the United States. That is incredibly important. But why not ground this plane? Why put reporters up in the air for a plane that you thought might be targeted? I again, don't understand it.
I mean, it's going to take some explaining, isn't it? But the rest of you will be told that you're anti-American because you wanted Trump to get help. But that isn't the point. The point is he left those people on board that aircraft to potentially be taken out by a strike while he was safely somewhere else.
And if I'm correct, there was an interview after they all came back together, and the president said, "Well, the good news is for you is if they take me down, if they take you down, they're taking me down as well." Turns out that was not true.
That wasn't true.
'Cause he wasn't on the same plane.
Good heavens, wow. I mean, that is really something, isn't it? And he was playing golf the other day with missile launchers around the golf course.
Just really, it's baffling to think about how he's trying to explain away the fact that, I mean, listen, how often we hear we've won the war, prices are down, there's no such thing as affordability. Gas prices they're not down yet, but they're coming down really, really fast. And oh, by the way, Iran wants to negotiate a peace deal. They're begging for it. I don't know how people fall for this, but we do.
Yeah. Every single time. I mean, it is quite something. The other, there's so much going on in the States. There always is, isn't there, at the moment? More than 400 former US intelligence and national security officials are raising concerns that President Donald Trump is weakening institutional checks on executive power and using national security tools against perceived opponents. This is according to the Financial Times. There's nothing new in that news, is there? We've known this about Donald Trump. He's particularly, he loves a lawsuit and he hates his enemies, so he's going to go after them all.
I do think the one thing that's interesting about this is you have 400 former security officials warning that the checks and balances are gone. And, you know, I think when you look at why have dictators, why have they failed? They failed because everyone's afraid around them. He surrounds himself with people who will only tell him what he wants to hear, and he doesn't rely on experts. That's kind of what our president is doing now. Not relying on the experts who say, oh, wait a minute, let's think about this. And Iran is just a perfect example of that. Not new, but I don't know. Why do I think that it feels like it's worse?
Yeah. I mean, tell you what, there's going to have to be some proper soul searching in America about the laws and the Constitution and how to shore that up and how to make sure that this can never happen again. There's going to have to be some proper hard work done, I think, by the entirety of the US.
I agree.
My final story is the one that I have been enjoying enormously, and that is Donald Trump made an appearance in Las Vegas with a head of much thicker and blonder hair, baffling Americans. Just days ago, Trump was seen next to the director of the CIA with his normal hairdo, a wispy, thin bit of blonde hair atop his head. However, now he has a voluminous, thick, lovely, obviously natural head of hair. Did he think we wouldn't notice?
I was going to wear that tonight for this interview.
I wish you had, but you're so handsome without it. You don't need it.
There is also the photo where it shows the piece, whatever it is, came up and it was kind of flapping in the wind. I've been watching. I don't know why, but watching his hair over the last 4 or 5 months, and it has been thinning. And I kind of felt like it was a good move. Sometimes aging, that's not a bad thing. Allow people to see who you really are.
Yeah.
And I thought the weird hair is gone. It's kind of looking like you'd expect an 80-year-old man to have, kind of. And then this. So it's
a sight to behold. And look, He's got the cojones to go out there and say, yeah, this is it's not a wig.
This is it.
This is real. This is my hair. But I have to say that I've been enjoying the memes enormously. There are a lot of comparisons with him and his mother, who had very similar hair to what Trump has got now. Didn't she? I mean, it's a very similar. She was all bouffant sprayed and backcombed and everything. It's a different colour, the hair. It is definitely a lot thicker.
Oh, it is absolutely new. There is just no other way to look at it.
And
it's not like the rest of us where you're gone for a few weeks, you haven't seen someone in a month. I mean, we see this guy every day.
Yeah. And that's another thing, isn't it? About him sleeping in the Oval Office. We see him every day doing that as well. But Bill, don't get a wig. Don't do a Trump.
A little secret. Years ago, when I was first married, I tried it, and there's a long story about it. It was embarrassing, and during my honeymoon, we cut it off. My wife and I cut it off. And since then, this is me.
Yeah, your wife's adorable as well. The very best to you, Bill. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. The fabulous and not wearing a wig, Bill Keeler, host of First News with Keeler on WIBX Radio in New York. A quick break and back to your calls in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. Just to let you know that tomorrow, I forgot to mention this earlier, that on midnight tonight, where are we? What time is it? Yeah, midnight tonight. I get very confused once we pass over midnight. The Talkback Hour is going to be with talking about vitamins and health and all of those things. So with Monica, so do get ready to give us a call. We've had her in before. You absolutely love her, and she'll tell you all these supplements and healthy things that you can do to keep yourself healthy coming into well, this summer. I've started taking iron and lots of vitamin D and C. But she'll be talking about all of those things as well. So we'll be doing that tomorrow night. But we are talking this morning about the cost to us of paying to switch off wind farms. £1 billion already this year. And we have to pay for the wind farms for the electricity that they would have sold, and then we have to pay the gas companies or the oil companies for the stuff that we use to replace the energy that we're not taking from the wind farms, because the infrastructure isn't there yet. So how are we meant to buy into this? How are we meant to be happy with that situation? And does it make you? I mean, it just makes me so angry that we're rubbish. Can we not do anything in this country? Is there nothing we can do properly in this country? I mean, just name something. Bob, first-time caller in Durham. Good morning, Bob.
Morning, Petrie. I have actually spoken to you before, but that's irrelevant.
Well, it's good to speak to you again.
Thank you. In regards to two things, actually, you've been talking about. Well, the first thing is the wind farms. There's actually a solution. It's a solution that should have been put in place initially. So the solution is very simple. Actually, it's what's called a land battery, and the Norways actually are working on land batteries at the moment and have some in place.
Land batteries?
Yeah, it's called a land battery.
What
Let me
are
explain
they?
it to you.
Yeah.
Well, it would resolve two major problems that we have in this country. What they do is they create double reservoirs, one on top of a hill, one on the lower part of the hill, okay, where the wind farms are. When there's overcapacity, they use the overcapacity to pump the water up to the top reservoir. okay? And when there's no capacity, they release the water back to the bottom reservoir and they get hydroelectricity, okay? And it should have been put in place when we started building wind farms. Now, if you consider that most wind farms that we have are built in mountainous areas for obvious reasons, or for good reasons, because that's where the wind is, in general terms, it should have been done already. Now, we have a massive reservoir in just across the Pennines from me, actually. It would make perfect sense to be building a land battery using that reservoir as the base reservoir. You get two things. You get two wins. You get more reservoirs and more water storage, which we desperately need.
So you'd have to build, I'm just trying to imagine this, so you'd have to build almost like a lock canal. So you'd have it on two levels. You'd have
it's got to be on two levels.
You'd have to have it on two levels. So when there's overproduction of electricity, you pump the water from the bottom, you use that electricity to pump the water from the bottom level to the top level. And then when there is more demand than supply, you release that water across some turbines, and that creates that electricity, and you just keep rotating that system.
I mean, you're
That's
obviously
brilliant.
going to get a loss. You're obviously going to get a loss because you do always get a loss with moving things about with energy. But the capacity, it gives you extra capacity because it gives you the extra electricity when you don't have capacity.
And would you ever be in a situation where there was too much water on the top and not enough on the bottom?
Well, you couldn't have that position because you just release it. You just release some of it.
So you would lose that. You would lose that, maybe that bit of energy, but you would still.
You'd still have that capacity.
Yeah, I mean that's brilliant. I like that.
But the other thing as well is at this moment in time, we have massive droughts around the country for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into politics about that. However, we do have massive droughts around the country. Them reservoirs will be, it's exactly what we need. We need a reservoir building infrastructure. The problem that we have in this country seems to be that we do everything, and I'm going to use a terrible term, like half-cocked.
Yeah.
You know, we simply go, oh, yeah, let's go and build windmills, but we don't think about what everyone else is doing and how we can provide and how we can kill two birds with one stone, which is what we can really do here. Yes, it's going to take a decade to put them in place.
But we've got to do it. We don't have a choice. This is now a desperate situation.
£1 billion a year that we are using at the moment could be pushed to doing that.
But that billion is only just for 6 months of this year.
Exactly.
So, you know, we're looking at that. I get so annoyed about the waste because it's not their money. It's our money, and they just come back and tax us more when they run out of it, instead of spending it properly and doing a proper job.
And this is not something I thought up. This is already in place. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, I haven't checked it, but I believe it's Norway that have actually got them in place, and they work perfectly.
I mean, that's just such a brilliant, simple solution. I mean, it's not technical at all, is it? I mean, not
particularly.
It's not particularly. It's not like waiting for batteries to hold energy to be developed at speed enough. I mean, the Chinese are doing a really good job of that, but you know, we need these.
Why would we want to do that if we can?
And the batteries will take up so much water as well.
Exactly. Well, why would we want to develop new battery? I mean, yeah, we do need to develop new batteries. It's a silly comment I'm making, but if there's a simpler solution that's more economical and that's actually probably more environmentally friendly, if this is what it's all about, then why aren't we looking towards them things? And I'm sure there's other sort of very easy solutions to put into. But yeah, that's. I kind of sat there and thought, well.
And it's a beautiful thing as well. Nobody's going to complain about a reservoir near them, right?
Not particularly. I mean, if you think, again, and I have to say this again, yeah, the infrastructure is big, but again, we are facing massive droughts. I mean, how many reservoirs do we have, big reservoirs do we have in this country that could facilitate that in the next 10 years? So you'd have to build two, you can only have to build one. You know,
you just have to make sure that they were in a position where you could have that two levels. You'd have to build up one end of it, wouldn't you, and then create another level.
It makes absolute sense. It really does. I just can't understand why we're not even.
Oh, because common sense isn't very common, is it? I mean, that's the problem. I'm with you 100% on this, and we are absolutely pants at anything like this. We really are bad at it. It's frustrating. Because this is about energy security. That would kill two birds, what you said. There's energy security, water security, and in fact 3 birds, because that would be food security as well.
Exactly. You know, long-term planning, it doesn't happen in this country because we don't have a government that's ever, or a prime minister, and I'm not going to get very political, but we don't have them that's ever, they're sitting there waiting for the next person to come and take the job.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's all they care about.
Long-term planning, and that's all they care about. They're not caring about the actual country. They're caring about what can they do to remain in power for them. So they're flitting about doing menial things that really isn't going to help the country at all. Which brings me on to my next point, if you don't mind me taking another 5 minutes. So, I have spoken to you before. I'm an ex-senior prison officer.
Oh, right.
And you were talking earlier in regards to releases and stuff like that, and paper releases, and why is it all paper and stuff like that. There's a couple of reasons for that, if I may point them out.
Yeah, of course, please do.
Since I've been in the service, but my last post was a reception manager, so I used to manage people coming and going out. And it's interesting that you should say it's all paper. It has to be all paper, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The courts change release dates constantly, depending on various different government sort of procedures that are going on. So they speak to what's called a discipline department within a prison constantly or consistently in regards to all of these things. They can't be done electronically a lot of the time because it has to be a physical warrant that moves a person in and out of prison. You have to have the physical warrant in front of you. It has to be a paper copy, and it has to be an ink-signed copy by the judge. Okay, so that's what keeps you there. Now, I know that's I know it sounds a bit archaic, but there's another reason for it. There's a security implication putting it online. Okay, as soon as you put things like this online, it immediately becomes open to hacking. And that's why
they're being manipulated. But I'm just the identification of prisoners, though. When we get the wrong people released, why is that so complicated? Because I would have thought
it shouldn't be. Then that should never happen. I can tell you exactly why it should never happen. I can give you a real-world example of this as well. Okay, every prisoner that moves in and out of prison is fingerprinted. Okay, and they're electronically fingerprinted.
Yeah.
Okay, so
how does it happen then?
Well, it shouldn't. I mean, the only reason that people get released incorrectly, if it's them that's supposed to be released, is via sort of, it's now a governor, but used to be what's called a principal officer. Used to sign a lot of paperwork up and send them off. However, everybody should be fingerprinted out. Now, I have a real good example of this. About 15 years ago, I had somebody that was trying to get out of the prison that I was working. I'm not going to go into where I was working, etc. And they managed to make their way down to reception. And it was the fingerprinting analysis that actually stopped them from being released, because they put the fingerprint on them, we knew straight away it was the wrong person. Okay, so that shouldn't happen in real world terms. It shouldn't. And there's a couple. I can't give you a lot of detail because I can't go into security details. But
no, of course not.
There was at least 3 checks before they get to that gate, and even at the gate, there's another check there before they're released. So it should never happen, really. It's the only reason if that does happen is complacency.
It's so bad, isn't it, when we hear these prisons? But I knew it was all paper.
It has to be.
And it has to be for security reasons, but that just slows everything right down, doesn't it?
It does, but would you rather it not be slower and accurate than quicker and more inaccurate? There's more chance of it being... Oh, yeah, there is mistakes made, and there's mistakes made all of the time, and I don't work for the prison service anymore, so I'm not going to apologise for them. But what I will say to you is there's a lot of very hard-working people that are trying to do the best that they can.
I'm sure. I think the prison guards and prison workers have just treated so badly.
We could have an hour's conversation.
I genuinely do think that, because I think it's a thankless task. To do that work, and of course, if Nigel Farage had his way, the Nightingale prisons will need more.
They wouldn't work in a million years. It's absolutely. I've got nothing against Nigel Farage or anybody that votes for Nigel Farage. I'm not political in that mentality. But the security to build a prison is massive.
Yeah, that's why it takes so long.
I used to be a security principal officer, and we used to work on security manuals that we had at the time. The actual to build a prison is absolutely huge. There's a lot of things that people are not aware of. Half the staff aren't aware of some of the security procedures that are in actually physically building a prison. You know, he's talking. It's rubbish. It's a pipe dream.
Yeah, it's word salad, isn't it? When it gets to that stage,
to make people go, oh look, it's great.
Yeah. Oh, good. There's the solution. It's like, yeah, well, who's going to run these places? No.
Exactly. And there's the other thing. Where are you going to get the staff from?
Yeah, where are you going to get it? Because it's already understaffed, right? I mean, that's part of the problem. Bob, it's lovely to talk to you again. Those are two really interesting things. I love that reservoir thing. I think that works for me. And Rick has said there's a hydroelectric power station at Dinovik in Snowdonia. It must be 50 years old. It suffers from the same problem as the wind and solar in that it's too far from the areas of high demand. You haven't got mountains within the M25. There's got to be a way that we can just build the infrastructure properly for a change. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie with you until the top of the hour. As usual, I'm taking your calls here. We're talking about green energy as we learn that so far this year we have paid, you and me have paid £1 billion to switch off the wind turbines in certain areas. It means we're paying twice. We pay for the electricity they would have generated because the companies, that's the deal the companies did. And then we have to pay for the gas that replaces the electricity that we weren't able to use because we switched the windmills off. We just don't have the infrastructure at the moment. And it just putting the cart before the horse. That's what it looks like to me anyway. Kev in Nottingham has sent this voice note.
From what I can remember, many decades ago when it all started being developed and pushed out to the country as a good idea, it was all sold as we're going to get cheap energy if you're in the areas of the wind farms or the solar farms. But that's never happened, and it never will happen, because the only people that make any money out of these green energy farms, the landowners and the electricity companies that put them in. And in the end, they're going to get free energy and all they have to pay out for is maintenance. And it's a ridiculous amount of money that gets wasted and we have to turn them off because they've not got the system right and they can't store the energy.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that it is so wrong. I think that if you live near a wind farm or a solar farm, just for the inconvenience of that or maybe the effect on the property value, you should get and because it makes blooming fiscal sense. Rather than switching off a windmill, let people have cheaper electricity, and maybe that will help with resale. You know, if they've lost a couple of grand because there's a wind farm up the road, then a prospective buyer will see that their energy bills are going to be lower, and therefore, you know, offer the same sort of price for the house. I just don't think I don't think anyone's going to mind. But when it was put to Keir Starmer's government, he said no, because that would produce a postcode lottery of energy prices. I don't mind that. I don't have a problem with somebody in a different part of the country paying less for their energy. I don't know why I don't know why anybody would have a problem with that. As long as we weren't paying to supplement that. I'm not that generous. I don't want to supplement your energy bill, but if it's energy that was going to be chucked away anyway or switched off, have it. Have it for a tenth of the price. I don't care. Let's just not waste what we've got. Gary has said, who wouldn't want a reservoir built next to them? Local process groups and conservationists have been blocking the building of a reservoir at Abingdon in Oxfordshire for the last 30 years. It's still not got approval. I mean, what? Why? I know Abingdon. I mean, they wouldn't. Why would that be a problem? Ugh. Anyway, back to calls. David is in London. Hello, David. You're not convinced by green energy at all?
Hi, Petrie. Yeah, absolutely not. It's only because I've done an awful lot of research on this. There are people online you can learn this from. But basically, Petrie, our energy bills are only going to continue to rise because as more and more renewables are installed, constraint payments will increase, as will maintenance costs increase. And they keep telling us, Petrie, that these renewable energy is free. But you see, coal, gas and oil are also free. The cost of energy is in the processing and the
absolutely right. Absolutely right. The one thing that this green energy is, though, is sustainable, but it isn't free in the same way as absolutely you're saying. It's the oil and gas is free, right? It costs money to get it out the ground and then to pipe it and then to clean it and then to change it into what we want it to be. That's where the costs are. And you're absolutely right about that. But constraint payments should go down once we've got the infrastructure right.
Well, the trouble is, you see, is that you can't control the weather. And if there's too much wind and too much sun, it keeps having to be given away. And then there's another problem, Petrie, and that is the fact that wind turbines, particularly offshore wind turbines, they don't last very long. They only last about 15 years. And as they age, the maintenance costs increase. But on top of that, every single year, a wind turbine becomes less efficient because as they get older, you see what I mean?
Yeah. But what's the alternative? Because it isn't oil and gas, because that is a finite product, right? Yeah. It's not sustainable. We've also got wars around the world that are pushing the prices up. They've got nothing to do with us. The latest price hikes have got nothing to do with us. What's the alternative? Nuclear.
Sorry?
Nuclear.
Possibly. I mean, I'm not an expert, but there must be other people who know. But my impression, Petrie, is that our government have rushed into this. They're trying to please people like Greta Thunberg and the other green people, and they should have stopped and studied this properly.
I agree. Like I said, we've put the cart before the horse.
Yes.
We've got all of these things that can produce electricity, but we've got nowhere to store it. We can't transport it, and then it becomes absolutely useless. And we're paying all these constraint bills because we're producing too much and we can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
It frustrates the hell out of me.
I agree. It's frustrating. Government spending is out of control, and not only that, Petrie. I mean, just have a look at the damage, the birds that are being killed. This is not being reported. People should look into it. There are so many really good organisations fighting this, and people don't just accept what Miliband says. Miliband doesn't know what he's doing either, I don't think.
No, I've never thought that he knew. Yeah, wind turbines, we've just looked it up, they can last 20 to 30 years on average. Parts inside, like gearboxes and main bearings, often experience heavy stress and may need major repairs, you're right, around 10 to 15 years. So you're absolutely right, that is all ageing, and that is going to have those cost implications.
Can I say one more thing, please, Petrie? All of the energy has to be backed up by gas. But the problem is, you see, when gas-fired power stations are not being used, if we're using renewable energy, there's going to be times when we're not using the gas power stations. The problem is, it's like a car. When you don't use it, and when you do need to use it, things start rusting up. So even more maintenance costs. Do you follow?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, we've just got to find a way. I think it's got to be nuclear as the backup as opposed to gas. David, good to talk to you. Thank you. Some excellent points. Absolutely excellent. Quick break. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. Ernie has sent this message. If we have to stop wind farms producing too much energy, it proves that if it was run properly, it could actually work. But our politicians never put the infrastructure in first. Before we converted to North Sea gas, every house in the country had a gas meter put in. By putting an unrealistic timeline on going net zero, the opportunity to do something that could be amazing for Britain and the earth is being strangled at birth. Politicians mean well most of the time, but they haven't got the expertise. It's absolutely right. We've put the cart before the horse. It just is the most ridiculous thing that we don't have the infrastructure to support what could be an absolutely brilliant thing for this country and bring prices down. Grace is in Ealing. Good morning, Grace. How are we this morning?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very well. I'm freezing cold, actually, in here. The aircon is way too high. But anyway, so what do you make of this?
Well, first, I don't want to be argumentative or anything like that, but whilst the previous caller said you can learn these things online, something being online doesn't mean that it's true. There are all kinds of different opinions online, and one might think that one.
No, but he had some very good points. He did make some excellent points about the cost of infrastructure and all of that.
But the fact that some people online might question the need for green energy, or rather decarbonising, to mitigate global warming, it's not the case that we shouldn't reduce man-made carbon emissions.
No, to be fair though, that isn't what he was saying.
Okay.
That is not what he was saying. Yeah, I think you did, but that's not what he's saying.
And, I mean, more broadly, I quite often hear other people saying, well, we only account for 1 or 2% of global emissions, so what's the point? And it seems fundamentally, this is going to sound like such a judgmental word, I don't want it to, but selfish to have that attitude. We do need to care about our emissions, even if our country's emissions aren't the majority of global emissions. Our carbon footprint per person here in Britain is significantly higher than the carbon footprint of most other humans. China's going to have a bigger carbon footprint because it's a flipping massive country with a whole lot of people. And we've got higher carbon emissions per person than they do. And I think that the more selfless, sensible thing to do would not be to say, well, we shan't do anything about it because our country doesn't make up the bulk of global emissions. We should be thinking about working for the good of humanity and doing what we can, particularly because as we are one of the more developed nations, other countries will just continue using more fossil fuels if we continue using more fossil fuels. We need to switch to green energy in order to encourage middle-income countries.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing that we don't need green energy. I think we do, it's the only sustainable future that we've got. But we're talking about the fact that the infrastructure just isn't there. And if it's costing us £1 billion for every 6 months in this country to switch off our energy creators, then something's going horribly wrong.
Yeah, it's clearly the case that there's been a horrific lack of planning and therefore energy is being wasted. But I will quite often hear people saying, well, why bother reducing fossil fuel usage when we only make up a small percentage of global emissions? And I'm afraid that's a selfish attitude. And I didn't kind of believe in God until
I think it's a valid. I do think it's a valid question as to what difference would it make if we were net zero. The push for net zero is ridiculously fast. It is not going to change fundamentally what is happening in the world. I think everybody agrees we should be pushing for net zero, but let's not bite the hand that feeds us at the same time, because just doing it by 2030, what difference is that going to make? It's not. If we're aiming for net zero, let's make sure we do it by 2050 or 2060 or, a slower timeline where we can get the infrastructure put in place so we don't have blackouts, because that doesn't solve anything. That destroys economies. That is not safe. It's not a good idea. Would you not agree with that?
I think we need to be aiming to